Hurrdat Sports presents the Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla.
Uribe, the one-strike pitch that's way outside, gets to the backstop. Contreras chases it down, throws to the plate. It's sliding in safely. It's Pham with the pitcher Uribe covering. The runners all advance on a wild pitch, 4-2 Arizona.
Now 2 outs. Carter the batter with the runner at third. And that one is swung on and hit deep to right. Way back there. That ball is history. The kid has done it again. Evan Carter with a laser 2-run homer. The Rangers lead 4-0.
And the pitch. Ground ball, shortstop shipping 2. Flip to second. Biggio back to first in time for the double play. Kepler will score with the second run. No RBI, 2-0 Minnesota.
Swinging a high fly out toward right field. Sanchez watches as it sails over the wall for a grand slam. Bryson Stott into the seats in right field. And here in the bottom of the 6th, as fireworks ignite in the night sky.
When you're having a tough ball game like last week, you have to try to create your own energy. Some guys did, some guys didn't. We created a lot of energy on Sunday night. No one was watching. We created a lot of energy yesterday morning. We'll have to do that Friday night. It'll be great to be on the road. They'll have, I haven't been to Illinois since I was a player, but I'm sure they'll have an excellent atmosphere.
Good morning and welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. That's Avarie Howard. We are getting you ready to go on a Thursday morning live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill at the H&H Chevrolet studio. And we have a great show for you again here today. Just a reminder, we're on AM 590 ESPN Omaha and ESPN Tri-Cities. Of course, you can find us on Twitter, YouTube, wherever you find your podcasts as well. And we, as I mentioned, have a terrific show for you here today. Coming up in a little while, we're going to have a little bit of me and Avarie first, but we will talk to our friend Brian Edwards at 8:45 from Vegas Insider. He will give us some advice on how maybe we can make some money this weekend on college football and maybe a little professional football as well. I might need his help because I was in a Pick'ems league with a couple friends of mine and I did not do well. So I need to get back on the winning track there with them. 9 o'clock, we'll talk to Michael Bruntz of Husker 24/7. 9:30, we will talk to Barrett Sally of CBS Sports. Want to get a little bit of SEC football. It's starting to shape up a little bit more interesting in some of these conferences and want to get his take on what's going on in the SEC. There's been a lot of talk about how Alabama and Georgia have taken a step back, and I want to get his thoughts on whether or not that's true or just kind of wishful thinking from the rest of the college football world who want a seat at the table as well. And then we will wrap up the show with Berry Tramel, who covers a team that'll be in the SEC next year in Oklahoma, the Red River. I always say this wrong. Red River Rivalry. Whoever named it that is a little sick in the head. That is this weekend, Oklahoma and Texas. See, if it was the Red River Shootout, it'd be fine.
Oh,
I
yeah.
could do Shootout. But
Yeah,
it's the third one in the row and then the extra R in Rivalry.
Red River Rivalry.
Yeah,
Red
I have
River.
to.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Mhm.
Avery, how are you this morning?
I'm good.
Doing good. I was out at Union Omaha last night for their final home game of the season. Had a good time doing that. That's the first one I had been to.
Okay.
So they're on a 12-match unbeaten streak
Yep.
now. I was a little bit worried that I might be like a jinx.
Uh-huh.
Like if they had lost, I was like, I can never come back.
Uh-huh.
Luckily, that's not the case. They ended up taking a 4-1 victory. But really appreciate Marty Cordero. He does a great job both with the Storm Chasers and Union Omaha. He is so kind to give us his time and efforts, whatever we ask. So really appreciate him. But
How was the atmosphere?
It was good. Yeah. So I really didn't know what to expect at all. And so it was a it's a Wednesday night at 6:30. So I was actually really surprised by kind of the number of people that were there. And I shouldn't have been surprised by this very enthusiastic crowd. Like,
Yep.
Soccer fans are just,
They're faithful.
and they're different. Like
Yeah.
they express themselves in a very different way. It's, so you've got kind of the drums out on the berm the
Yep,
entire game. And I was like, I don't know that I like anything enough to drum for 2 straight hours
Yeah.
over it.
Yeah.
So that was cool. And then it is funny, though, because you do get these kind of reminders every once in a while that you're still in Nebraska, because you'll have somebody yell at the ref or the other players or whatever, like you would at a football game. And I was like, yeah,
We're
it's
still
soccer,
here.
but it's still Nebraska. So it was kind of a fun mixture of your kind of typical soccer crowd and then your American football crowd as well. So that was cool. I think, have the biggest beer can I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
It was a 25-ounce can, which I didn't know existed.
Yeah.
Because tall boys are like 16.
Yeah.
And then this one was, I could have used it as a baseball bat. It was enormous. Don't worry though, I finished it. It was
Okay,
good.
I was worried.
You seemed concerned that I wasn't gonna be able to make it through it. No, but it was a lot of fun. I did not have any of the famous hoot juice.
I don't know. I don't actually think I know what it is.
So it's a fluorescent green liquid, basically. Anna was trying to describe it to me. It sounds basically just like adult jungle juice.
Yeah, yeah.
Which on a Wednesday night scares me a little bit. I was like, this could get away from me in a hurry. So we avoided the hoot juice and just stuck to the child-sized Bud Light can that I went with. But
Real life size.
it was like, this is the size of a human baby almost, and it weighed about it. It was really heavy. I was like, what is happening?
It's actually funny you say that, because my friends and I one time walked over to Storm Chasers game and we said the same thing. We're like, look, it's random weeknight. Maybe we'll just have, one and whatever. I was like, nuh-uh. I don't think so.
Not one of those.
Yeah.
I sent a Snapchat to my wife. I go, it still counts as one.
Yeah.
So that's always fun. But yeah, I was curious about the hoot juice. A friend of mine was out there and sent me a picture of, and they come in like these really tall, kind of like, I don't even almost these carnival cups.
Oh yeah.
The ones that kind of look like a really skinny dumbbell almost.
Yeah.
And he sent me a picture of 2 of them, and I was like, oh man, you're in trouble. And he's like, these are actually both for my wife. I was like, oh my gosh.
Okay.
I was like, she is getting after it on a Wednesday. Although she's a nurse, I think, so she probably has earned it, if we're being real here. But no, it was a super fun atmosphere. And the weather was kind of perfect.
Yeah, it was beautiful yesterday.
It wasn't too cold, which is good, because if it gets cold, I'm out. I'm peacing out. We're done here.
Okay.
But it was a really nice evening for it, and obviously Union Omaha came away with the W behind a Dos Santos hat trick.
Yeah.
It was it was a weird game, right? Because Omaha scored first, and then I still have not seen the Charlotte goal because it happened so fast.
It was an interesting goal. I watched it on TV. It was interesting.
Yeah. So what happened? Because I looked up and they didn't replay it, because I don't think they replay away goals.
Yeah. I think they thought he was going to be offsides. Kind of stopped playing a little bit.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, the response was 30 seconds, 20 seconds?
Yeah, it was under a minute.
Yeah.
It was, I think officially it's the 20th and 21st minute, but they were literally immediately right after each other. And so that was kind of an odd way to get going. And then they didn't score again until the 66th minute when Dos Santos put his first one away.
Was that the PK?
No, so the PK was the second one.
Okay. His second one.
Yeah. So the third one overall. I think the first one was a header.
Okay. I didn't see
on a cross into the box, I think. But then so in right in the 90th minute, right before stoppage time, he gets fouled in the box, has a penalty to kind of put the game away for Omaha, and then just gets a bonus, and in the 5th minute of stoppage time.
Did I see 7 minutes of stoppage time?
Yeah.
What was that about?
So there was half a dozen yellow cards in the second half.
Okay.
They were getting super chippy.
Yeah.
And then half the time they were announcing yellow cards that I didn't even see what happened.
Yeah.
And I was paying attention. I was just like, I don't know if they were just getting after each other a little bit and the refs were trying to keep it under control. But
got it. I saw 7 minutes and I was like, either whoa or hope everyone's okay.
Yeah, no, there was no, I mean, there were a couple injury stoppages, but it was mostly yellow card stuff. Not the band yellow card.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's an early 2000s joke. There was two of probably the funniest and worst flops I've ever seen in my life by Charlotte. Yeah. Did you see him?
No, just flopping in soccer is such an interesting topic.
It is. And like, listen, I'm an NBA fan, so I'm not throwing stones at a glass house here. Yeah. Like I get it. But there was like one of the Charlotte guys literally rolled. Like I was like, oh, that's a little excessive. And then he rolled
again and again and again
like
and again.
Four times after I thought, and he like turned a corner, which was like, he wasn't just rolling in a straight line. He like made a 90-degree turn with his roll. And I was like, what happened there? Like it was like one of those things you don't even totally believe you're watching. It was hilarious. And I turned to my buddy. I was like, am I seeing this right? It looked like one of those, I don't know if you, so I watched these ridiculous car simulation on TikTok where they like CGI a car like going through crash tests and stuff. And they'll crank it up to like 300 miles an hour, and then the car will just roll for like 30 seconds. That's what this guy looked like, was the CGI car just continuing to roll. My
favorite part is when they hold the ankle, but it was like an elbow injury. Yeah. Or it was like something completely irrelevant.
Immediately they go to the lower leg, and they're like, ah. Yeah. But yeah, he wasn't even holding anything. He just kept rolling around. It was wild. And then the goalie for Charlotte, there was kind of a little dust up in the box, and nobody really got hit or hurt or anything. And then as he's like backing away, so it's clear that there's no one near him, he just falls backwards. I was like, bro, the ref's standing right there. He saw you do it. It was a little funny, but
I think the scream that comes with it usually kills me. Actually, too.
The other thing that I love, and this is, so I watch a lot of like Premier League. I really like Premier League soccer. Obviously like international soccer, I watch a lot of also, but every soccer player universally, when they miss a shot, no matter how bad or how close, it's like the
I talked about that yesterday. I was like, it's the dramatic antics. I don't know where it stems. I don't know what age it starts.
I don't either.
Because it doesn't translate to the women's game. It's just, we don't do that. We just never did that. And I don't know where it starts.
And there's way less flopping.
Oh, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It literally doesn't happen. And it's no shade on their game. It's their thing. But I talked about it literally yesterday watching the game. I was like, I don't know where this whole like face covering like thing started. But it like, oh no.
It's like
the best shot of my life.
Yeah, it's like they're seeing their child go through like an agonizing medical procedure. They're just like,
yeah,
and they always like look up and close their eyes, and it's regardless of level, regardless
it's
of
like a mold,
like where they're from. It is the
same
wildest thing. Everyone reacts the exact same.
I know.
And sometimes they'll go here, and then they'll go above the head, surrender cobra, and and then they shake it. They shake it.
Yeah.
It is one of the like most random funny things.
It's crazy. And the thing, this is probably on my mind because I went to the Creighton Omaha men's game the other night, and when I was in college, like that game was always chippy. In the past few years, it's kind of settled down a little bit, and it got pretty intense 2 nights ago.
Yeah.
Which I enjoyed watching, as a rivalry should be. So that's why I think this whole antics thing's on my mind. But after the game, Omaha's AD Adrian walked by me and a few of my former teammates, and he's like, "Hey, you guys are never that dramatic." And we were like, "Say it a little bit louder, say it a little bit louder." But we were just speaking about like, where does that like come from? I'm so curious, like where it starts. And so I had conversations with people in the office yesterday, and then my roommate yesterday as we were watching the game, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't have the answer.
Legitimately have no idea.
No,
because you're right. There is a huge difference from the men's game to the women's game in terms of like how they carry themselves and the antics and all of that. And the men are so dramatic.
I think it's more of a finesse sport on the men's side that I think sometimes that gets intertwined. Like,
okay. Like it's a more physical game on the women's side.
I would say women's they play a skilled soccer game too, but I think the guys play a more skillful soccer game where I think they play more physical, sure, because there's a lot more speed involved. But I think on the women's side, it's a little bit more physical without obviously the flopping. But I don't know. I think the skillfulness and the finesse of the men's game maybe breeds some of that.
Like lends itself into.
Yeah.
Okay. That kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, I think we've got headphones. Thank you, Shane. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hopefully everybody could hear all that.
Yeah.
I think they could.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would make sense if it's kind of a stylistic.
Yeah, I think it has to do with some of the style
deal, which would sort of make sense because you kind of see this from the way the NBA game has changed, right? Like back in the day, it was super physical, probably a little less skilled, and certainly a lot less flopping. If you want to go like 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
And then as the guys got more skilled, because I do think this is the highest skill level basketball's ever seen, that it has gotten a little bit more like flopping and dramatic. And so that's an interesting theory. I hadn't really thought of it in those terms. But yeah, the Union Omaha game was terrific. Really appreciate Marty Cordero.
Moral of the story.
Yeah. Moral of the story. It was super fun. I really enjoyed myself. And whoever that guy was that rolled on the ground for like 30 minutes for Charlotte, just like, you got to be better than that, man.
Yeah.
Like,
how was the pop time after?
Oh, really long.
Oh no, it wasn't I got the foul and then I'm up.
No, because I don't even think he got. Or no, he did get a foul.
Okay.
I think he even got a card out of it, so I think he milked it a little bit longer. Too, and like, listen, there was good contact there.
Okay.
So the foul made sense, but the sheer duration of rolling, I was like, anyone who was injured could not move that much.
Yeah.
Like,
great point.
It is not possible to move that much while actually injured.
Yeah.
So that was really bad pop time.
Okay.
It was he really made a meal out of it. So it was ridiculous. All of my soccer terms, by the way, come from like Ted Lasso, Welcome to Wrexham, and Sunderland Till I Die. Okay. And a little bit of Rebecca Lowe on Saturday mornings on NBC before Premier League. But so I try and use the lingo a little bit. But so do you watch? I know you obviously played soccer at Omaha. Like, do you watch professional soccer a lot?
I do. I have never gotten to the Premier League or European. No, and I think it's just I've actually talked about this a lot too because I have a lot of friends that don't play soccer, never played soccer, and they are diehards on that side of things, and they've always just had a team they've connected with. Yeah. And I think because I've never gravitated towards a team like younger, it's just hard for me to like want to get up and because the time change and knowing when to watch the games and stuff. And so it literally feels kind of foreign to me. And so I would love to go physically and watch a game and experience it because I think that would change everything for me immediately. I'd be like, yes, right. And it's like you talk like my head coach at Omaha and coaches before, like it's some of the best like athletes and athletics in the world. Yeah. We just don't grasp it because our style of athletes and athletics here is just completely different. Different. Yeah. Like they are on a next level over there. And so I would love to watch it. But in terms of soccer watching here, I love women's college soccer. Like I watch it every Thursday, Sunday, the full, like I love that every game's almost on ESPN Plus. Like that is my favorite thing to watch. And then I watch the women's national team all the time. And then the NWSL, KC has a team, which I love to watch. I actually have some friends on the team, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
Played high school with a few. And so that's kind of cool how like local having that is. Yeah. But just drawing talent from players that I played with or against because of just where the league's at right now. It's KC's in a pretty great spot opening their first stadium for women's soccer in the world. Which is pretty cool. But then I watch Sporting KC here and there, but that's the majority of my soccer watching is
women's college. Yep. Yeah. So I obviously I never played soccer, so I didn't really have the connection to it there, but I really got into it probably in like the 98 World Cup for whatever reason. I was just kind of the right age for it. Yeah. And it is way easier now to watch international soccer than it used to be, which is like it used to be a chore to try and find it. So it's nice that some of the American broadcasting rights have sort of caught up with European soccer. But honestly, the only reason I have a connection to the Premier League is there was this player that I'm a Liverpool fan.
I was going to say, here's your team. Okay.
Yeah, Liverpool, go Reds. But there was this player that played for Liverpool back in like the mid to late 2000s. named Steven Gerrard,
Okay.
he kind of did like, as a soccer novice, I kind of always wondered, because you would see these guys take these shots from pretty far out, and it seemed like they never made them.
Mm-hmm.
And they would go sailing over the goal, or they'd go wide, or they'd just go right into the goalie. And you're like, either why are you taking these, or why can't anyone make them? Like, if you keep taking them, I have to assume somebody makes them.
Yeah.
And if nobody makes them, then why do people take them, right? It's kind of like the Steph Curry thing. Like, if he wouldn't keep taking the 35-footers if he didn't make them.
Mm-hmm.
And I found this guy, I think I read about him in an article, Steven Gerrard, who I'm sure he didn't make them nearly as often as it seemed, but just crushed these super long shots, and they just were screamers, right? And I was like, I like that.
Uh-huh.
That was really,
that's my guy.
It wasn't, kind of the beautiful footwork of like Ronaldinho or a Messi or any of those guys. It was just like this pure power of just unloading from outside the box and just crushing the ball. And I was like, I like that.
Yeah.
And he played for Liverpool, so I was like, well, I guess I'm a Liverpool fan now.
Okay.
So that's been honestly, it's just like when you're a kid, especially, just the most random stuff that gets you into the teams you like. But so I would encourage some Premier League. It's a lot of fun. This isn't like a hot take. It's probably the highest quality of soccer in the world.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Like, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And because I've watched some like La Liga or Bundesliga and stuff like that. It's obviously really good.
Yeah.
But I think the Premier League's better.
Yeah.
It's just another level. So
yeah.
That was your soccer segment for the morning.
Yeah.
Reminder, you can find us on AM 590 ESPN Omaha. You can find us on ESPN Tri-Cities. And we will get to quite a bit of college football. Don't worry. We've got you covered.
Yeah.
I do want to start with college football before we get into our next segment. Did you see what the Utah NIL team did?
Yes.
Every single scholarship player got a brand new Dodge Ram.
Yeah. So I read about
Selfish.
Yeah. No, I read about it, and it's like a 6-month lease situation.
Sure. Okay.
So it's for 85 of the scholarship players, which when I read it, I was like, well, that's really unfortunate for the few guys that aren't driving the same car now.
Right.
Like
oh,
those
the walk-ons that are.
Yeah. Like, oh, sorry, guys. But it's like a 6-month lease situation. And I guess I don't know how this works, but the head of the collective was like, if it works, we'll keep doing it.
Yeah.
And it was like, we'll purchase as need be. And they're 2024s.
Yeah, they're brand new.
$61,000 trucks. But I read something that this collective specifically has raised, like, these are drastically different numbers, and I can't remember which one, either $3 million or $6 million since May.
Oh, wow.
So
they're getting after it.
I guess so.
Yeah. Well, I've always kind of liked Utah football.
Yeah.
I have a really soft spot for Kyle Whittingham. I think he's just one of the best coaches in the country, and hardly anybody talks about him.
Okay.
And just the way they've played, like, they look like a Big Ten team. The way they play on the lines, the kind of the power football they played. I've always loved Utah football, and so I'm kind of encouraged that a place like Utah can get this kind of NIL thing off.
Well,
the ground,
I actually want to read the Crimson Collective. It has a partner with For the Win, and For the Win is a streaming application that provide all Utah athletics content, scores, highlights, and exclusive interviews with players.
There you go.
So they've got it figured out somewhere.
Yeah, let's start getting some Nebraska players Dodge Rams. Let's go. Coming up next, we've got more of Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha.
We will be back. 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 We will be back.
I think they'd probably be, if it's true, they'd probably be scared to say that to me. When I was at, University of Buffalo, I was 24 years old. I was the youngest Division I full-time assistant coach in the country, and we got fired with 3 games left. I never remember my dad saying, how you coach these next 3 weeks is who you are as a coach. If you coach less, you're no good. And if you coach harder now because you want to win so you can keep your job, then you weren't coaching hard enough to begin with. So we're just trying to get these guys to be the same guy every day. So I think the coming off of last week's game and the challenge and the opportunity on Friday night, and then the way we've worked this week, I think guys are hopefully just pretty much locked in on tonight's practice and tomorrow morning, and then getting up there and playing a good game.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. And I'm Ravi Lulla. That's Avarie Howard. We're with you all morning here today on a Thursday. And you can join the show on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline, 888-638-4876. Or you can send me an email, ravi@hurrdatsports.com. And we will be happy to get to your thoughts and anything like that. Some of Rhule's thoughts from yesterday I thought were interesting. We got to him a little bit in that clip there. And I think we were talking about this on Tuesday, Avarie, about the consistency of what Nebraska wants and needs from their players. And Matt Rhule, as he has a way of doing, puts it so simply, but it's not an easy task, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he said it, we're just trying to get these guys to be the same guy every day, which is a tall task, right? Because I don't know that many full-grown adults who have that down, who aren't trying to play football in front of 90,000 people with another group of people trying to prevent them from doing their job, right? It sounds really easy.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds really easy. Like, yeah, just do the same thing every day. Just be the same guy every day. It's actually really hard.
Yeah.
Because you've got so much going on around you, right? Let's take the football out of it, right? You got class, you've got family, you've got your relationships, you've got all of these other things. You've got your own mental health, whatever's going on there. And that's not to mention, and that's a normal day. That's an okay day without anything going wrong, right? I mean, you were a college athlete, you understand. And this is even take that can kind of turn it up to about a 12, right? Because of the way that people like us talk about what they do,
turn
right?
to 100.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
It's just a whole, but it sounds so easy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's probably the biggest difference between programs that we'll talk about later with Barrett Sallee in the SEC and with Berry Tramel talking with Oklahoma. Those teams, it's consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yes, there's a talent gap between Nebraska and Michigan, but it's consistency. Is there a huge talent gap between Illinois last year and Illinois this year? Probably not. There's some.
Yeah.
There's some experience for sure.
Yeah.
They lost some guys in the NFL. But as you're watching Illinois and getting, kind of preparing for, I know you're going up there tomorrow, kind of preparing for that part of the job, you look at Illinois and you're just like, they're just really inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where Nebraska is right now too. And it makes it really interesting for tomorrow. You said this off air. It's really hard to get into my head. Like, the football game is tomorrow.
Like, I know it is tomorrow, but it is tomorrow.
Yeah, it's like actually that it is the day after today. As you're kind of watching Illinois, obviously you've watched all of Nebraska pretty closely. I guess when you're trying to figure out who's going to be able to be more consistent, like, where does your head go?
It actually kind of goes to the first thing we heard the other day when we talked to one of their writers, and he said, they move the ball really well. They just can't execute when it's important in the red zone. And also then they just make a mistake. And so I think for Nebraska's sake, which team can limit the most self-inflicted wounds? Because that's kind of been Nebraska's MO for a little bit as well. So I think that's been cleaned up a little bit in the past few weeks in terms of turnovers specifically. But when you look more at, pre-snap penalties and just, maybe some broken coverages, little stuff like that. I think it sounds so simple, and that's what we keep saying, it's just easier said than done. But if whoever can limit the most mistakes at this point, because I think probably from a talent position and maybe on paper from what you see, Nebraska is the better team right now, despite, last week's loss or maybe just some of the turnover. So how do you live up to, the talent on your team, the strengths that you actually do have? And then kind of just getting back to, I think, maybe the mojo that they were in before the Michigan game. I think this Michigan game will hopefully prove some positives. I think it definitely instilled some fire this week. I think before it was like, okay, we're getting there. Like, okay, that was a generous step forward, or that was, a few shuffles forward maybe. But last week it was kind of like, oh, okay, these 2 wins we had in the last week, they were fine for the record, but what did they really do for us?
Well, we need to play better.
Yes.
Right?
So I think that's some of the questions they've been asking themselves maybe this week, in some reflection, or at least it kind of seems that way in what Rhule's been saying. So like we heard the other day, they had some coming to Jesus conversations at Illinois as well. So there's 2 teams that have really had to kind of return back to their core, it seems like. So I think as much as you see stuff on the field, just because of where these 2 programs are right now in this portion of the season and coming off the weekends they had last week, as it probably seems, I say this every week, and it seems more of a mentality mindset game.
Sure. Well, and it's, we talk about this a lot, and I've talked about this a lot. It's most things in life, and especially football, are really, really simple. They're not easy.
Yeah.
all of the things we've talked about. Some people talk about it as, hey, you control what you can control. Some people talk about, consistency. Some people talk about being the same guy every day. However you're saying it, it's all really talking about the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's about bringing a consistent level of effort and execution and energy to whatever you're doing. And I think, you brought up an interesting point about the Michigan game. I think Nebraska could get away with, because I don't think they played particularly clean against Louisiana Tech. I thought it looked better against Northern Illinois, but I know early in the game against Louisiana Tech, they didn't tackle real well. Yeah. Obviously, the offense took a little bit time to get going and get on track there. And, the way Coach Rhule has talked about, hey, we need to play free and loose and all these things, it seems like they could get away with playing maybe a little more conservative, maybe a little tighter against Northern Illinois and Louisiana Tech and still get a win.
Yeah.
Then they went out and played tight against Michigan, and we saw what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So maybe it's a good reminder of, hey, there's going to be some teams you can get away with playing tight against, but that's not how we do things.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how the University of Nebraska plays football. And so hopefully, I'm really curious to see what it looks like tomorrow, because I would expect them to come out and look like they did. He mentioned Minnesota. Outside of the self-inflicted mistakes, like you talked about, they played really good football.
And I think that's why that first loss was as crushing as it felt.
Gut-wrenching, right? Uh-huh. Because I'm watching that game the whole time right here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. And I'm like, oh, yeah, Nebraska's going to win this game. I truly believed that until the very last second. And it's because they were playing really good football. Their defense looked great.
They did look
I'll
great.
take it.
And just like Bo.
Yeah.
And the offense needed some work, and they couldn't really find a rhythm there. But even through all that, the way they were playing was this totally different thing than we've seen the last couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And if they can return and play like that against Illinois and only turn it over once instead of turning it over 4 times, you're going to win a lot of these Big Ten West games.
Mm-hmm.
The Big Ten West is mid, as the kids say, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not good, right? You can get
flickering.
I don't even know if it's flickering, Bo. It's not good. The lights are out on the Big Ten West.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't pretty.
Yeah,
that's
there
closer.
You go.
So
wonder which game he's talking about in that clip.
And which one?
This one. It wasn't pretty.
I mean, you could just
pretty.
throw a dart. But so that's what I'm interested to see tomorrow. And when Coach Rhule said earlier in the week, like, hey, like you're going to find out about us. That's what I want to find out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's specifically what he was talking about, but when I want to find out, like that's what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I'm also curious, like just as a player, I guess, hearing these things, like I know that they're all together in this messaging, and I know Coach Rhule is not me versus them, like at all. It's like this is all of ours. This is all of our fault, or what this is all of our responsibility. But when you hear your coach talk this way in a press conference that you haven't heard in a while, I also feel like that probably has to instill a little bit of fear, not in a bad way, but like, okay, so we've been on the same page this entire season, but he's expecting like way better than what we saw last week.
Yeah.
Like, I know we've been on the same team and we are this weekend, but like we have to perform now for the expectations of our coach as well.
Sure.
That they maybe not have heard verbally yet. Like they knew what his expectations are, but it sounds like we have something legitimately to prove this week. Not like next season when we're getting better, but like this week we have to prove to him that we took in all the coaching and we got better this week, and we're not going to stand for that.
That's a really interesting point. We'll get to that and more here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back.
I think they'd probably be, if it's true, they'd probably be scared to say that to me. When I was at, University of Buffalo, I was 24 years old. I was the youngest Division I full-time assistant coach in the country, and we got fired with 3 games left. I never remember my dad saying, how you coach these next 3 weeks is who you are as a coach. If you coach less, you're no good. And if you coach harder now because you want to win so you can keep your job, then you weren't coaching hard enough to begin with. So we're just trying to get these guys to be the same guy every day. So I think the coming off of last week's game and the challenge and the opportunity on Friday night, and then the way we've worked this week, I think guys are hopefully just pretty much locked in on tonight's practice and tomorrow morning, and then getting up there and playing a good game.
Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. That's Avarie Howard here with me on a Thursday. I want to talk to you about our friends at Rockbrook Camera. They are not just interested in selling you a camera, although they certainly can do that. They want to help you become a real photographer and the best photographer you can be, whatever that means for your life, whether you're just capturing memories and moments or if you're doing it professionally. Rockbrook Camera has you covered, whether it's at the point of sale with the latest technology like mirrorless cameras, or if it's support after the sale with their classes and things like that. They have got your best interest at heart. You can trade in your old gear if you're ready to upgrade, or you can go ahead and get a little rental from them to try some things out as well. And that is something you can check out at rockbrookcamera.com or at the 168th and Center location in Omaha, or 70th and Pioneer in Lincoln. That is our friends at Rockbrook Camera. Avery, we were having a really interesting conversation during the break, kind of about, we were talking about Coach Rhule and the simple versus easy and kind of what those conversations look like within the locker room. And, it's coaching is, obviously I did it for a long time, not necessarily very well. We were successful, but I contributed to that success in my own way, but I would not have been a good head coach because that's just not kind of a lot of the things that you have to do are not sport related.
Yeah.
Most of them.
Yep.
Right. In terms of being a good head coach, which is one of the reasons I got on board with Matt Rhule so quickly, because the things he talked about weren't necessarily football things. They were life things. A lot of times when you hire a coach, for whatever reason, it is about the football. It's about what kind of, and I think we talked about this on Tuesday, what kind of identity do they bring to the football field in terms of their scheme and their concepts and what system they want to run. And that's not really what Matt Rhule does. He's pretty adaptable. His teams have run different things. He has been, he's been more QB run heavy. He's been way more pass heavy. He's been a little bit more power. He's been a little bit more spread, depending on what his guys bring to the table. He's done this with a couple different OCs across his different stops, right? And so you look at it and you're like, okay, so what's the consistent factor in his success? Because, you look like I look at a guy like Gus Malzahn, for instance. He runs a very specific offense, runs a very specific system, and he's very good at it, right? You look at a Lincoln Riley. That guy runs a system. He has his own twist on the air raid. It is about the schemes. And that's not to say those guys, although I've heard Gus Malzahn's a tough hang, but I'm not saying I'm not saying these guys don't have the other stuff, right? But when you hire Lincoln Riley, you're hiring him for that reason. And I think that is kind of so much more secondary than I used to realize when it comes, whether it's football, basketball, whatever. And I know you have some experiences with that in terms of your playing career too. And I guess, how do you process it more from a player standpoint, receiving the coaching versus either as a fan of a team or as somebody, I coached for almost a decade.
Yeah, I think something that you bring up a point that I feel like I kind of jumped on the ship a little bit too, is something that you have to value, at least in, I guess, when Matt Rhule speaks, I guess, and this is me coming as a former athlete, is he's consistent when they win. He's consistent when they lose. And that doesn't mean that your emotions can't vary. Like you have every right to feel emotion after a win and a loss, especially if it's a loss like last weekend and feeling angry and challenging your team. But your messaging and your philosophy doesn't change. And I think that's something that's been really impressive to watch. And I think maybe I just really value that, because it's really challenging and confusing as an athlete when the leader is saying so many things all the time. And when things are good, things are great. And then when things go challenging, how do they respond? Because at the end of the day, even when you try to control your own emotions or try to control, being the leader of your team internally, you still do model how your coach behaves or they lead. And so their body language or the messaging that they have. And so I think to have a coach that has a consistency like he has been. And I think, it's like I said, the confusing part, it's confusing because you think your team's identity. And then when it loses and the world falls apart, it's really hard to stick to, well, then what are our core values that get us through these challenging times? And so the fact that he has such a grounded perspective off the field, and I think also just grounded perspective in terms of there's a bigger thing outside of football. As much as this is our life and this is why I'm here and this is literally what pays my bills, I know that our bigger message and our bigger purpose is to make sure that, this is a good program for people on the field and off the field. And, I was at the hockey press conference yesterday and Coach Gabinet simply put it, he goes, good people like good people, high achievers like high achievers. And I think when you create a culture of that environment, one, that's attracted and it's felt. But two, I think when everyone comes to that level and you have a locker room and a coaching staff filled with good people, I would hope, and wanting high achieving is at the ultimate peak of what you want to do. I think you start to attract that in recruiting, you start to attract that in just multiple assets. And so I think when you start to fix the culture, you fix the heart of a program. I think at some point that's when it starts to come out on the field. So to your point, the coaching of football is entirely important, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes that is reactionary and secondary to when everything else is being dealt with properly first.
Yeah, I think the way I would kind of sum up the point is if you've got all of the other stuff right, then almost any football stuff, if it's well taught, will work. Right? It's not like there's only one system that works, or there's only one way of defensive alignment or strategy or concepts or whatever. It's not like there's only one thing that works. If you coach it well, everything kind of works. Right? It's all the other stuff that if you have your culture right and you have your accountability and you have trust in your teammates and your coaches, if you have all of that stuff right, then as long as you're competent at the football, you'll have success.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of that's the thing that I like about Rhule, because Nebraska hasn't done that thing yet.
Right.
Like I don't know what Coach Solich was like. I know that's what Coach Osborne was like. I just assume Coach Solich is kind of an extension of Coach Osborne, but they hired a football guy with Callahan. They hired a football guy with Bo Pelini. I think they hired a football guy with Mike Riley, although I think they
hired maybe a good guy with Mike
I think
Riley
they were just trying to hire the opposite of Bo Pelini. And then they hired a football guy with Scott Frost.
Yeah.
Scott Frost is like pretty good as an offensive mind. He's a football guy. He doesn't have a lot of the other stuff that you would want. So that's why I'm so attracted to the way Matt Rhule is doing things, because it's a totally different method that Nebraska's tried for the last 20 years.
You in a good mood or what?
I also think too, like, life and sports are pretty metaphorical.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
When you have things figured out in life, the performance and your enjoyment of life in general is higher, right? So I think how many times growing up do we reflect back on the lessons you learn from sports to teach us about life? And so those things are so intertwined and so connected. And as simple as it sounds, I just think you don't realize how much disconnect usually there is sometimes until that ship is, rewritten and it's put in the right direction. Because like you said, we've seen it in the past few years when, things off the field or the culture or the heart of something isn't right, the things on the field aren't right. And so the life lessons that come from one another are so crucial. And I think that's also what makes Coach Rhule a pretty impactful coach, is he sees those things and he also uses them to his advantage.
On the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline, we've got
a phone call here.
Evan, who
Someone has a phone call here.
Thank you, Coach Rhule.
I own
Evan, he is my college roommate and my expert on all Illinois things. Evan, how are you this morning, buddy?
Oh, what's up, man?
How are you doing?
Hey, honestly, this morning was a bit slow. It was kind of a hard morning, but this hold music got me doing a rave in the kitchen, bro. This is nice.
I appreciate that. That's all Shane's doing. So I know you want to get into Illinois a little bit. Do you want to? We've only got about 90 seconds here. Do you want to hold on to the top of the hour? You can start breaking down Illinois for us.
Hey, let's make it happen.
All right, Shane, can you put him back on hold? We'll talk to him at the top of the hour. Yeah, we good? Thank you.
When I saw this on here, I was like, oh, Evan, a college of a roommate of Illinois. Wow, that's interesting.
No, Evan is my college roommate. He's born and raised in Champaign-Urbana. Okay. So if I seem to have a weird knowledge of Illinois football, it is his fault.
Okay.
He actually took me to a Illinois game in 2007 when we were in college together, and that was the year they ended up going to the Rose Bowl.
Okay.
But it was like their 4th or 5th game of the season, so we didn't know they were good yet.
Yeah.
And they were playing Wisconsin. It was a huge upset. They beat Wisconsin. So it was super fun. I've always had a little bit of a soft spot for Illinois football because they've had a rough go of things.
Yeah.
And obviously they were pretty good last year, right? Go 8-5. And I'm like, hey, yeah, they're going to be good again this year. And he goes, no, we're never good 2 years in a row. And I was like, oh, it's like that, huh? So we'll get to Evan. He's actually, I was talking to him last night. He's got some really good insights on Illinois football. We will get to that. We've also got, we're going to do a little get to know you game with Avarie as well. All that and more coming up on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha and ESPN Tri-Cities.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Hurrdat Sports presents The Damon Benning Show with Ravi Lulla.
He's an excellent football player. High draft pick. Powerful, two gap, makes plays down the line, can torque you in the pass rush game. Their scheme, because they play with 5 down linemen basically 90% of the time, creates 5 one-on-ones. So you have to win 5 blocks, and they have to just win 1 pass rush, or 1 run block to have a successful play. So it's a real challenge. But he's an excellent football player, And so he's one of those guys you have to game plan around. You have to do things to account for him. At the same time, understanding that they have other guys who can hurt you. And so it'll be a real challenge.
Welcome back to hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. That's Avarie Howard. We're brought to you by our friends at Dyer Law. If you've got a personal injury accident, you can count on the folks at Dyer Law to provide you with a helping hand when you need it. No matter what you're dealing with, call the Dyer Law team, 402-393-7529, or visit dyer.law to chat with trusted professionals about your personal injury claim. That's DYER.law. You can hear us on AM 590 ESPN Omaha or ESPN Tri-Cities. And we still have Evan on the phone there, Shano?
Yep, he's ready to go.
All right, we're going to get to Evan. We got a nice Johnny Newton clip there from Coach Rhule. I know that's a player near and dear to Evan's heart. Just so there's context here, I was college roommates with Evan before he became an Illinois football expert. Actually, he kind of already was at that point. The only person I know that likes Illinois football better than Illinois basketball. Evan, what's up, buddy?
Hey, what's going on? Yeah, I thought you were about to throw me under the bus. Do you need someone to tell you the two deep of the 1999 MicronPC.com bowl?
I got Kurt Kittner. That's all I got.
Okay.
Brandon Lloyd, was he on that team?
Man?
Was Brandon Lloyd on that team?
He was on that team.
Nailed it, 2 for 2. I'm a little better on 07. I was telling Avarie during the break that you took me out to the other Memorial Stadium in Champaign back in 07, before we knew that Illinois was actually good that year and ended up in the Rose Bowl. And that was a fun experience for me.
Yeah, that was good. And I shot you this text last night. Juice Williams back this weekend as an honorary captain.
Yeah, you said you had some commentary on that as well about how Nebraska.
Yeah, we'll leave that off there.
About how Nebraska might be a little trouble with the juice back in the house.
Yeah, come on. Hey, okay, so I'm listening to that clip of Coach Rhule talking about Johnny Newton, and it's good. The biggest problem is that so far this year, none of those other guys have won their one-on-one block. So it will be interesting to see tomorrow night what happens, because so far they've not done a very good job of that.
Yeah, and Johnny Newton's a guy that can kind of wreck a couple blocks at a time every once in a while. He's a super physically gifted defensive lineman there. What about the rest of your defense? I know that you mentioned the rest of the D-line. Those guys aren't really winning their one-on-ones, and you guys lost a ton in the secondary. How has that part of the defense come together? Because to me, that was the biggest question mark going into the year. But as we're talking, we talked with Robert Rosenthal on Tuesday. It didn't even seem like the secondary was necessarily the biggest hole. How have you seen the defense in general in terms of by unit?
Honestly, the secondary hasn't been as big of a hole as I thought it was going to be coming into the year. What has killed the secondary so far this year has just been really untimely penalties. And so, which I think comes with youth and technique, but they haven't given up huge plays, but they've given up huge penalties on 3rd and long or whatever, a holding, a pass interference, and which, is expected to happen. I think the biggest frustration that we've had watching this defense this year is the ability to stretch out run plays and to hold contain on the edges of the line. Because these are the same guys that were playing last year that were able to make a lot of these plays. And this year, it's not happening. Now, we got a new outside linebackers coach. The coach we had last year went with Ryan Walters to Purdue. So we do have a new coach in that position. Okay. But theoretically, it's the same system. It's the same guys. And it just seems like not a lot of edge discipline. And teams have been able to gash us out there.
So when you see that Nebraska's offense is basically solely on the ground, how does that make you feel?
Well, honestly, okay, here's the thing, and Ravi and I talk about this a lot. I'm an Illinois fan. I've been an Illinois fan my whole life, so nothing makes me feel great. I'm constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop, and that's what's happened this year pretty much. I will say, so the teams that have really destroyed us on the outside, Toledo and Kansas, who just hammered us, they had a quarterback who was able to run a read option, but also to hold the defense and make them honest on RPOs, on throwing the ball as well. So that's what will be interesting this week as they come up against Nebraska, which is obviously, I think they're leading the Big Ten in rush yards.
They are, yep.
Yeah, and so when you know that's the only thing they're going to do,
can they still
how
do
does
it?
that change your mindset? So it'll be interesting.
Evan, as you're kind of going through this year, I know before the year we talked about, and sorry, this is basically just turned into an interview.
Our Illinois insider.
His credentials are that
Hey,
he's the only person I know who's rooted for Illinois football for 25 years. We were talking about the expectations from last year coming off an 8-5 to this year, and you're like, oh, we're never good 2 years in a row. What has been, I guess, so you were expecting kind of a downturn a little bit. Has it been better, worse than you expected? Where has that landed on? Because I think you said, 5-7? Is that what you told me coming into the year?
I thought 5-7 was most likely. I thought they would go to a bowl game.
Okay.
I thought 6-6 was, which is still on the table, but I thought back-to-back bowl games was possible.
So I'll be in Champaign tomorrow. Are there any stops? I mean, it's a limited time, but are there any places I got to go?
Yes. Okay. So this is what we're just going to call this segment "Traveling with Ravi," and you should have an away fan call in every week and just tell you where to go.
Yeah,
I think that's the move. So. Okay. How long are you here for? You're here just for tomorrow?
Literally I land at like 10. The game's at 7. So between the hours of 10:30 and probably 4:30, there's a little bit of time maybe.
Okay. So I do have a few spots. So if you like burgers, there's a place called Smith Burger Company.
Okay.
It's in downtown Champaign, and it's pretty cool. They just connected with a local brewery as well, and so they have all the open doors and
cool.
their own beers and their own homemade specialty burgers. And I'm telling you, it's some of the best food I've ever had in my entire life.
Fantastic.
So,
Wait, do they stay open after the game?
After the game. So you go down to Poor Brothers in downtown Champaign.
Okay.
I'm going to assume I don't know your age. I'm going to assume maybe the campus bars might not be your spot.
Because the trip is so quick, I'm going to say no. Yeah,
but I would say no, even if the quick was long.
Okay, then perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I would say Port Rose downtown is really nice. Seven Saints they got really good sliders.
Okay.
DD's Beef is on campus. It's the best Italian beef sandwiches you've ever had in your entire life.
Okay.
Ooh, okay.
Cool.
Yeah, I can't believe you didn't recommend Fat Sandwich. I've been telling everybody about Fat Sandwich, but I also haven't eaten there since I started getting heartburn, so I don't know if that's a good idea anymore.
Yeah, I was about to say, once I started having that, I have a stretch timer that goes off on my phone every night at 8:30 to make sure I don't get too old. Once that timer was set in place, Fat Sandwich was out the door.
But Avarie is significantly younger than us, so Fat Sandwich still might be on the table for her.
Oh, you can have, my go-to sandwich at Fat Sandwich, I do burger, I do egg, hash browns, chicken fingers, mini corn dogs, and buffalo chicken bites, and they put fries on top of it.
Holy cow.
Yeah, this place you can put literally anything you can imagine on a sandwich. It's incredible.
Whoa. Okay.
It's probably the best drunk food in the world. Is that fair, Evan?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, that's how it was created.
Sure, yeah.
Like that was just it's all of the great ideas that Ravi and I had in college but did nothing with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
We ate this the morning of Evan's wedding, and I think his wife almost killed us because she thought we were going to get our tuxes dirty.
Yeah.
I got something else dirty.
Yeah.
For sure.
I don't even know what that means, Evan. Buddy,
final thought I got is that Illinois has pretty much, I mean, they've gone above and beyond to make sure that this game, like, people didn't have to watch this game, setting their own stadium on fire. I need Nebraska to step their game up. Okay. Like this, I don't know what they can do to make sure that the country doesn't have to see these two teams play each other, but we've done our part.
Hey, now.
Set their own stadium on fire. Evan, appreciate you, buddy. I'm sure we'll talk plenty between now and tomorrow.
Let's make it happen. Appreciate you guys.
All right, thanks,
Thank
bud.
you.
That's my old college roommate, Evan.
You know what?
Legitimately probably the most knowledgeable person I know about Illinois football. Like,
Yeah.
it's insane.
We grew up in it.
Can I just say this?
What's up?
He sounds a lot like your other buddy.
Which one?
3-inch Bill Callahan playbook or whatever that everybody kind of lost their crap about.
Oh, my guy, Michael Bruntz. It's my guy. All right. Well, that was terrific. I appreciate Evan calling in. It's time, though. We got to know Evan a little bit more.
Mhm.
Now it's time to get to know each other a little bit more,
Let's
because
go.
we actually, despite working together, I tell people this a lot. I work at Hurrdat.
Yeah.
I don't actually work at
You're not
Hurrdat.
in. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I don't get to know my coworkers
Mhm.
super well because I'm always here.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do that. We're gonna. I don't have a clever name for this game. It's basically just a Hurrdat coworker AMA. So
Okay,
would you like to go first, or you want me to go
There's
first?
certainly some sort of play on words there we could do, but
There
it's okay.
is.
We'll get to it
We'll
sometime.
figure it out.
Okay.
We'll get to it sooner or
Yeah.
later. Do you want to go first, or want me to
Sure.
go first?
If you didn't work in radio or sports, what would you do?
You mean like what's my day job? Because I do have a day
Well,
job.
like dream job, like dream
Dream job.
job,
I mean, this is
like the passion.
I mean, honestly, this sounds pretty cheesy, but
Mhm.
like radio is
Yeah.
my dream job.
Okay.
Like I worked so hard to get
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
while trying to have a day job still.
If it
it's-
wasn't like sports specific, like,
yeah.
would there be
um,
something else on the radar?
You know, I really love talking about like movies and television
Mhm.
shows. Like I'd probably do still some sort of like content creation, but it'd probably be more focused around like media in
Mhm.
terms of I love movies. I go to
Yeah.
some of my favorite memories as a kid are me and my brother would go to, and you probably don't even know what these are. Me and my brother would go to Hollywood Video, it's a movie rental store that was I think it was local.
Like
Every
Blockbuster?
yeah, it's like a
Okay.
Blockbuster, but like we were Hollywood.
I loved Blockbuster.
Yeah, we were Hollywood Video people
Okay.
instead of Blockbuster
Okay.
people. And so we would go like every Friday night and like go get a couple movies for the weekend, and like that was kind of our thing. And then
Mhm.
as we got older, we would see movies all the time, and so probably like some sort of like movie content or TV content.
Okay.
What about you?
Like dream job situation?
Yeah.
Oh man, that's so tough too. I mean, the dream the dream is like college game day or a sideline
Sure.
somewhere. That's
Yeah,
the dream.
yeah.
And I guess that's a pretty hard question, realizing that I asked you that and we work in sports, because I don't know what else I would do outside of sports.
Maybe coaching. You talked about maybe coaching.
I would love to do
Yeah.
coaching. But I wouldn't say that was probably a dream, but I would love to do something within coaching for
like as
sure.
part of a team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something that would allow me to travel, which obviously I'm doing now, but
Sure.
like internationally, maybe not sports related, but I don't know what the job would be, but I would love to travel and have some sort of something within that.
Yeah.
But I want to see so many things. And so, dream job for sure is like College Game Day.
Yeah.
That's been my favorite TV show
Sure.
since I was this
Yeah.
big. So, but if it wasn't sports related, I don't know what I would do. So
I'd say it's kind of tough for us
Yeah.
because like we have a lot of other people's dream
right
jobs,
for
you know.
100%. Yeah.
And I definitely appreciate that while I'm doing it.
So true.
So mine is, by the way, I hate traveling, just as a thing that
Really?
I hate it.
Okay.
Part of it's planes. I'm really bad on
Okay.
planes. But I don't mind being other places. I
Yeah.
hate getting to other places.
Yeah, that's fair.
Whether it's driving, obviously I really don't like planes. It's just the whole thing,
Yeah.
right? So like I'll go visit my buddy in Chicago, and like I like being in Chicago.
Mhm.
Chicago is a fun place to go to. I hate
Getting
getting
there.
to
Yeah.
Chicago.
Yeah.
Although I don't mind the drive as much as other
Yeah,
people
that's
do.
fair.
As
Oh,
long as it's
yeah.
under 8 hours, I'm okay.
Okay. Yeah, a road trip doesn't bother me too much depending on where it is. Like I think I've been conditioned to almost hate portions of road trips because we're in the Midwest, so
Mhm.
that like the first few hours are terrible.
Yes.
I could drive hours and hours and hours and hours and hours in like Colorado or all of that,
Sure.
and it doesn't like I'm like, oh, I don't want to get out of the car yet.
Right.
So I think that's the difference. But and planes, like I don't mind flying, but like incredibly hot take here. I would rather do short increments of flying than a long flight. Like,
like multiple stops?
100%.
Really?
I cannot get comfortable. I cannot sleep. I like to be active. I want to go to Europe and I want to go to all these things. I am like, do I want to sit on a plane that long?
Yeah.
Like, people are like, oh, it's a direct flight. Thank God. I'm like, yeah, but it's like 5 hours. I'd rather do like a 2 and like another 2 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, incredibly hot take. I like
that's an unusual take.
Uh-huh.
I see. So I have to get pretty medicated on flights. So like direct flight's ideal. So I don't have to do it
can't sleep
twice.
on them. Like I sat next to Mitch Sherman on the way to Minnesota the day after the Nebraska volleyball day or whatever. I had like 2 hours of sleep that night. I'm in the middle seat and he probably thought I was crazy the whole time. I was like trying to hold my head up. I was like balancing it on my knee. I was so tired and I was like so restless. He probably was like, what was wrong with this?
He
girl?
probably thought you were like hungover and gonna throw up or something.
Well, that's the funniest part because Sasha and I had literally, this is a funny conversation. So literally Sasha and I get through security. Our flight was at 6 a.m. We were there at like 4:30. Volleyball day Nebraska had just happened. We were there all day. I was there from like 10 to whatever. I got home, finished posting, finished like last minute packing. I didn't go to sleep until like probably close to 1:30.
Yeah.
Woke up around 3 to get to the airport or whatever. And me and her both get through security. We go straight to the little checkout thing right by our gate. We both purchased ibuprofen and we both were taking it down because they were and the guy, this guy looks at us. Me and her were so tired. She was like, I feel hungover because I'm so tired. Our eyes were bloodshot. I like had this terrible headache. And so we both grabbed water. Like we were downing this ibuprofen or Tylenol or whatever. And this guy that didn't know us like looked at us and he was like, hungover, and we were like, no, we had volleyball day and now we're going to Minnesota, whatever. And there was a few other media members where they were like, yeah,
that's the funny thing about as I get older, if I don't get enough sleep, I do feel hungover. And then the worst part, you've got this to look forward to. I will get hungover without even having been drunk the night before.
Oh, fun.
Like, so I'll have a couple of glasses of wine with dinner or something. I'll have a few beers at a game. Won't even get a buzz at all. And then I'll wake up the next morning, and if I don't get like a real solid night's sleep, I'll feel hungover.
Yeah.
I'll just be like, really?
Wow.
This is the mid-30s, really, guys? There are other things to look forward to, but you'll enjoy that one.
Awesome.
All right, my turn. What is your favorite holiday and why?
Oh, Christmas for sure.
Okay.
I just love our family's traditions. We stay home and then we usually take like a trip after. But it's, when I was younger, I just loved it because we would be with like both sides of the family. And now since we're all older, everyone has their own thing. So one side of the family is kids now. And so they go split one way and vice versa. So for my family specifically, now that, I'm out of college, but my other brother's in college, it's the first time majority out of the year that we're all home again. So I just enjoy us all being home. And I actually really enjoy when it's cold and on Christmas. We went to Cabo one year on Christmas and like it was hot and I was like, so when does Christmas happen? We kind of missed it.
This is unnatural.
Yeah, so
Are we rescheduling Christmas?
Yeah, totally. So I just love the coziness of it. But really close second, I love Halloween.
Okay.
Because it's not even the dressing up. I just loved the vibes growing up. My mom would have cider on the stove and like we had a huge cul-de-sac of kids would run around. Like you'd come home from school and like school was out the door, it was like we'd go through at the neighborhood with our entire cul-de-sac. I just loved like the tradition of Halloween. And so now being here the past 5 years and I haven't been home on Halloween, like it also feels like I just miss it.
Sure.
Like I just miss seeing kids run around and being in a neighborhood setting. So I like those things.
Freaking bad.
Yeah, totally. It's freaking bad. What about you?
So I used to be a huge 4th of July guy.
Oh yeah.
I love the summer.
Yeah.
I love, it's a nice day drinking holiday, which I really appreciate. It's I just always had a lot of fun with like the cookouts and hanging out with friends and stuff like that.
The vibes are high.
Yeah, really, really. And I love summer. Summer is my jam. But recently one of my dogs is so bad with fireworks.
Same.
And he like destroyed a door this year. Because he had so much anxiety. Like we were literally gone for about 45 minutes. It wasn't even quite dark yet, so we thought we were okay. And we went to Target to grab some stuff, and we get back and just has like just shredded the door. And I'm like, oh, buddy. I felt so bad for him because he like dug at it so much. It like broke his nails.
Yes,
and
we had that situation. Our dog actually like chewed his way out of his kennel one time.
Yeah.
Crazy. But this past year, actually for the first time, the vet my mom went to the vet and he gave our dog this like dog friendly, basically CBD.
Yeah.
And he was cashed out. Like fantastic. Like he was great. So
That's
I don't know.
Good to know. I might have to check into that.
And they said, it has no effect really.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's CBD, but it's like pet friendly and all these things. And it was great.
I might have to try that because he really didn't do too bad the last couple of years, but this year he's younger. He's only about 3. Really struggled with it. So that has tainted my views on 4th of July a little bit. I've also come around. I was never like out on Christmas. It was just a lot of, I'm the youngest of 4. So it was a lot of like coordinating, like, hey, who's going where? And, for a long time, I was the only sibling still in Omaha.
Yep.
So it was like, okay, how do we get everybody together? It was just a lot. Now 3 of the 4 siblings are in Omaha again. So that makes it a lot easier. And like, my wife loves Christmas and it makes her so happy that like I kind of get into it too. So like, I mean, that's a big thing for me. It's just like how happy it makes her. I was like, yeah, Christmas is pretty cool.
Yeah, for sure.
But so I'll probably go Christmas now. Yeah. If I had to guess. Yeah. Do you have another one?
So I guess I had another sports one, but we talked because briefly the other day we talked about just like some radio calls and stuff that we've briefly done. If you could pick an event or a team to cover to do a radio call, what would be kind of the dream scenario there?
I mean, that's a great question. The first thing I thought of, which is probably the right answer, is if I could call a Creighton national championship in men's basketball, that would like make my life. I was so proud. Last year, I did 2 games last year. They're the only Creighton games I've ever done. I'm hoping to do more this year. But those are the only 2 games I've ever done. And I was so proud to have called regular season games of an Elite 8 team.
Yeah.
Like I was so proud of that. Yeah. It's like I was part of that. Before that. Yeah. I was like, I mean, I wasn't at the Elite 8, but I was sort of, so
that's awesome.
That was really, really cool for me. So that's a pretty easy one for me. There's probably like bigger stuff that would be cool. But the thing that would mean the most to me is if I was on the call for Creighton national championship. I'd probably throw up like from anxiety. Like I would definitely get sick at some point. But it'd be worth it. What about you?
College World Series. I don't know if being on the radio, I would love to like sit in on like for sure. But like be on the sidelines for it. Like I love the crew for the World Series. I love listening to especially SEC radio broadcasts. Like they've got the lingo with the draw a little bit, but I love the crew for the World Series, and it's probably one of my favorite top 2-3 events every year.
All right.
Series
well, we've got a couple more questions left, so we'll carry this over into the next segment. Coming up at 8:45, we'll talk to Brian Edwards and get you some betting advice for the weekend as well. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha and ESPN Tri-Cities.
We will be back. We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back.
Heavy on it. New York dinner. We come out and look like this is the end on the street.
We are halfway through the show here on a Thursday on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. That's Avarie Howard. We're live on AM 590 ESPN Omaha and ESPN Tri-Cities on Twitter and YouTube as well. Got some people chiming in on the YouTube comments, as they are always super active. Amazing Daniel attests to your CBD trick. Says it works very well with Thunder Fireworks. Highly recommend. I'm going to leave that last part out on air, but you can definitely have it on the YouTube stream. I don't really know what the rules are about that, so we're going to leave that, but always appreciate Amazing Daniel, who agrees with you on the Halloween. I actually like Halloween a lot too.
Yeah, it's just the vibes. It's just cozy. And
see, I like the costumes. I like doing costumes.
I never, like, when I was young, I got to, but then being college, I had games, never really got to celebrate Halloween, and it was more like the young childhood.
I'm surprised nobody's throwing out Thanksgiving just
Thanksgiving,
because you have the football going on Thursday, Friday, that whole week.
So Shane, I'm glad you brought up Thanksgiving, because this goes into one of my questions that I had for Avarie, because it is my most controversial food opinion.
Thanksgiving food
is that Thanksgiving food is wildly overrated.
Yeah, I actually I like Thanksgiving food a lot. Since I don't know how everyone else does it, but we like cook it at home. I know some people like to do like, the catered stuff, or they buy certain things and just like make the turkey. I think the turkey is the least interesting part.
For sure.
Okay, so it's probably not a hot take, but
Yeah.
but like if my mom makes like a really good like cranberry sauce with it, like now we're talking. But I like just how we put like a spin on some of the other dishes. The turkey
the turkey's just kind of there. It is. So this is something I've talked about a lot, and so people will probably get on me a little bit about this because I don't like turkey. It's not for me. I have always advocated for like a Thanksgiving prime rib, which would be terrific. It's just better.
Yeah.
My other thing is, so I like some of the less traditional Thanksgiving dishes. Like I would take a scalloped or an au gratin potato over a mashed potato.
Okay.
Personally,
Yeah.
I'm not a green bean casserole guy. Really do like pumpkin pie or a sweet potato pie.
Yeah.
But mostly because I really love Cool Whip, so that would I just like having that. But yeah, I'm not that into Thanksgiving food.
Yeah.
There's just other stuff I'd rather eat most of the time.
Yeah.
And so that's probably my most controversial food opinion. Do you have one non-Thanksgiving related?
This smells delish.
Probably, and it sparks from the conversation you and Anna had yesterday.
Mhm.
I don't like my steak under medium well.
Oh, Avery.
I know. It really upsets a lot of people.
Oh, you're from the Midwest.
Yeah,
Come
I don't really
on.
like the bloody cow thing. I don't really like the
That
like.
doesn't upset me.
Are you a medium well guy too?
Not so much on the well side.
Like it can I like it between medium and well, but I'd rather it be more medium well
You'd
than
rather
medium
be
rare.
more done than less done.
Yeah, it just
Oh.
I'm that way
So-
about like everything though. Like I get a little bit iffy at certain restaurants about like how they cook their chicken.
Is it like a
and
food
stuff.
safety thing, or
Oh,
is
yeah.
it just you
Yeah.
prefer the flavor?
So
yeah,
do
like go ahead.
do you
Shay.
go more red if you know you're gonna get some grief?
No.
Not so much.
Like if my dad cooks it, I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, cool, do whatever. Like
Yeah.
that's fine. I would like mine not like yours, but whatever. But then
Yeah.
when I like, or even like grilled chicken and stuff, I have no problem at home. I have no problem cooking my own. It's just when I go places, I've had too many experiences where you like, it's just like,
Don't feel great after.
just biting into something, and it's like,
Not the, yeah.
yeah,
not
and
the
so
texture.
yeah, and so then
That's fair.
That's the only reason why. Like it's not like really a flavor thing.
Mm.
It's more of like a ugh
Gotcha.
thing. Yeah.
I can respect that. I
Yeah.
can respect. If I meet somebody that's actually like, I prefer the taste of well done steak.
Yeah.
Like I have a really hard time.
Yeah, no,
just-
not really the taste. I
just-
would just say it's the
I can respect that
yeah.
for sure.
Like I get a little iffy at like if it's a nice restaurant that it's not a steak restaurant, but they do specialize in it. I
Mm.
usually am not the first one to be like, okay, I want the steak. But if everyone else is getting it, I'm like,
Yeah.
they're like, did you should really try it here? I will still order it between medium well because I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't want to be over here cutting through it. And now we have this really nice steak, and Avery's not eating it. So
That's
if I
fair.
can't get it down, then
That's fair. I
So-
respect it from a food safety standpoint.
Yeah.
I'll give you a pass there.
yeah.
Do you have another
Yeah,
one?
I got one. This sparked. Which teams or team
Mhm.
do you dislike the most
Ooh.
and why?
Okay, so we were talking a little bit about
Yeah.
this earlier because we're going
Mhm.
to talk to our Oklahoma guy in a little bit, Berry Tramel, about the Red River rivalry.
Yep.
Nailed it.
Yep.
Later on, so I think for a lot of people, it's Texas. I this is on a more personal level. I really hate Wisconsin.
Okay.
Now part of that is my ex-wife is from Wisconsin
Okay.
and is a huge Wisconsin fan.
Okay. So you just had to
So-
hear it all the time.
Yeah, there was just like a lot of it, and I didn't even particularly love it when we were still together because it was just, people that are kind of like they're sore winners.
Yeah.
Like I don't love being around that type of person, and that was definitely the vibe there, and so it made it hard to enjoy.
Okay.
And so and then after we split up, I was like, I'm out on Wisconsin. Like I'm good there. So Wisconsin's
Yeah.
probably the worst one for
Okay.
me.
Yeah.
What about you? I know you've got some
Yeah.
like old Big 12 hate
I
in your
do.
heart.
I do. Yeah. So it's funny because my peak era of Nebraska football was when I was in grade school,
Mhm.
and Bo Pelini was still our coach. Taylor Martinez was our quarterback for a good portion of that. And
Taylor?
Yep. And I have a picture of me. I just told Ravi this. I was a football player or a Husker football fan of some sort, like multiple times throughout grade school.
Yes.
And so there's a picture of me in Halloween, and I have the full outfit, full helmet, the whole deal. And I was in 3rd grade. I think I was like 10 or 11, and I was a mad trash talker because we were in the Big 12 and I had nothing to worry about. The only team usually ever was Texas. There weren't many Texas fans. But growing up a Husker fan, you're just taught like you don't like Texas. And then over time, it just was like you hate Mizzou.
Oh, yeah.
So I hated Mizzou. I always just thought they were really nasty. And then Florida was thrown in the mix as well. So those are like my 3. And
do you know why the Florida? You just hate them?
I do have a Florida one, actually. It's a fantastic story. So the last time that Nebraska played Florida was, I want to say, was it Fiesta Bowl, or was it within, that was 1996 though.
I think that's the last time they played them. Yeah.
So my grandma still has season tickets, but my grandparents went to like almost every like bowl game. They would travel to the whole thing, and they went down there, and as Nebraska had won, and as Florida fans were walking by and everything, my grandpa started chanting at them. He was like, "Orange and blue, make me spew." And people kind of like chimed in. And so growing up, I just was told that we hate the orange and blue color combination. And my grandpa would chant that. We never even played Florida. And so Texas, Mizzou, and orange and blue just did not do it for me. So growing up, and to this day, we do not play them. Nebraska does not see them. And it's just in my head, I just was fantastic that Nebraska would play KU, they would play Mizzou, they'd play K-State, and I was surrounded by those kids at school every day.
And
I'd be like, and you suck, and you suck, and you suck. Like, well, wild. And I'd be like, I mean, I would walk up to KU basketball fans, and they'd be like, how many national titles does your your basketball team have? And I was like, how many national titles does your football team have? Like, I was that person.
You were that one.
I was the how many national titles girl. So
there you go.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I didn't understand the Florida because I was like, I don't even think Nebraska's played them since you've been born.
Yeah. It was ingrained from my grandparents, and I just thought it was funny. And now I was like, ugh.
I appreciate the long standing hate. So here's an interesting one. I think it's interesting. Let's do, what is the most wrong you've ever been on a sports take?
This is interesting. I actually don't give sports takes that often.
I know. We might have to work on this. We might have to start getting you some hot takes out there.
I play it pretty neutral because usually my head and my heart are in 2 different places. And so I'm just like,
Well, and a lot of what you do is more like reporting than
it's
what
usually
I
not,
do, which is just being a nonsense factory.
Yeah.
I'll give you mine.
Yeah, go ahead. Then it made me think a little bit.
Bad one.
Okay.
Speaking of Mizzou, okay.
Okay.
So I was covering I believe it was 2011 draft for Bleacher Report.
Okay.
And it was the Cam Newton, Blaine Gabbert draft.
Yeah.
People beforehand, there was an actual debate about.
I hate Blaine Gabbert. Yeah, continue.
Totally fair.
Yeah.
There was an actual debate about whether or not, like, who was better and who was going to be a better quarterback. It was, there was actually a conversation about taking Blaine Gabbert number 1. People like to forget that was a real thing, but it happened. And I was convinced that Blaine Gabbert was going to be the better NFL quarterback.
Oh.
Convinced. And then Cam Newton comes out in the preseason and completes like 29% of his passes or something. He's terrible. And I'm doing victory laps. And then he comes out the first 4 games of the season and throws more passing yards than any rookie in NFL history. And I was like, oh, I was big wrong.
Yeah. And then you threw out Trevor Lawrence, and then
I mean, listen, I'm still holding on to Trevor Lawrence, generational talent.
Yeah.
Blaine Gabbert, not a generational talent. No. We can all agree on that. Coming up next, we're going to talk to our friend Brian Edwards, our Vegas insider. Let's see if we can make you some money here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. Now, Vegas insider, senior handicapper, and fan of the cold Budweiser bottles, Brian Edwards.
It's got to be touchdown, touchdown, touchdown.
Brian Edwards.
I don't really love it.
Brian Edwards.
The way they're using the cream cheese to butter the bagel.
Brian Edwards.
I'm going with the cowgirl.
Here is Brian Edwards.
Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio with Avarie Howard. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are joined now by our dear friend Brian Edwards, our Vegas insider. B, how are you this morning?
Good morning. How are we doing?
Oh, we're just getting through another day. It's weird here in Nebraska this week because there's a football game tomorrow. So it's a little bit unusual about just kind of how our week's going, but we're trying to figure it out. We're trying to get through it.
Yeah, Florida, when we played at Utah on Thursday to start the year, it was our first regular season non-Saturday game since 1992 when we lost at Mississippi State 30-6, and then we lost by double digits at Utah. So Florida does not need to be playing any weekday games if I had my druthers.
I was gonna say, are you gonna put it up to the AD? Be like, hey man, we gotta stop doing this.
I want my AD going anyway. That would be like the eighth conversation topic I would pick with him.
Are you not a Billy Napier guy?
No.
Okay.
9-9 overall. 6 of the 9 L's by double-digit margins. That is not. Spurrier at the farewell presser called Gator football this great big old battleship. I don't think Napier's battleship material.
Was it you didn't like the hire at the time, or you've just soured on it over since he's been there?
No, first guessed it. At Louisiana, he just made a lot of baffling clock management moves that reminded me of Les Miles. Although he won, and I bet on him a lot as an underdog. I would bet against him as a big favorite, which leads right into my Florida Vanderbilt pick whenever we want to get to it.
Let's get into it. Florida Vanderbilt this weekend. How are you feeling on that one?
Yeah, so I'm going Vanderbilt plus 18.5. So the Gators have only won by double digits against Power 5 opponents on Napier's watch. Well, 3 times, but they've only won by 19 or more, which is relevant because I got Vandy plus 18.5. I think it's 18 now, but that's fine. They've only won by more than 19 of a Power 5 opponent with Napier once. That was 38-6 to South Carolina. In 9 games as a favorite, Florida under Napier, 2-7 against the spread, 2-6 against the spread at home under Napier. And going back to his days at UL Lafayette as a favorite, Napier 5-13 against the spread. Now Vandy has struggled to cover this year. But look, they hung around pretty tough against Missouri and Kentucky, and this is just a big number. And Vandy is 7-4 against the spread, 11 games of road underdog under Clark Lee. So I'll go with the Commodores plus 18 or 18.5.
Speaking of big numbers, Florida State has a pretty huge number against Virginia Tech. Your rival over there at Florida. I don't know if I'd be keen on that number, but you do kind of like the over-under in that game?
I do. So it's anywhere in the 52-53 range, and I like it over. The over's 3-1 for FSU, but if the total had been 52-53 range, the over would be perfect for FSU. They've had combined scores of 55, 60, 79, and 69, and they average 43.3 points per game. But FSU's really struggling defensively. Boston College, who's not doing well offensively all year, put up 29 against them. FSU is ranked 118 out of 133 FBS teams in pass defense. And Vatek, not an offensive juggernaut, but had their highest offensive performance last week when they scored 38 against Pitt. Maybe they found something in their new starting dual threat quarterback, Kyron Drones. He had 3 touchdown passes without a pick against Pitt last week. He also has 205 rushing yards, 4 touchdowns this year. And Vatek, not very good defensively. I think Jordan Travis, Johnny Wilson, and Keon Coleman will get us most of the points we need. And I like it over 52 or in 53 range.
You're loving the overs this week. You got Arkansas at Ole Miss as well. What do you like about the over in that one? That's a little bit bigger number than that FSU one.
Yeah, so it is a high number, but they've had shootouts the last 2 years, a 52-51 thriller in Oxford 2 years ago, a 42-27 last year, which got to 69 combined. It does not hurt our cause that Dwight McGlothern, Arkansas's starting corner, 3rd team All SEC last year, he's doubtful, with a concussion from last week. John Morgan, transfer from Pitt, 2 sacks, 1 forced fumble. He is out this week. And look, KJ Jefferson got stymied last week by the Aggies, but Texas A&M is levels above Ole Miss's defense. I think Ole Miss and LSU's defense, as we saw last Saturday night, are on the same level. So I think KJ returns to his form that he looked great at LSU 2 weeks ago, and they had a big offensive showing. Jackson Dart playing really good for Ole Miss. Ole Miss great on offense, terrible on defense. I think we get points galore over 63 Arkansas Ole Miss.
Well, and you mentioned the other team on the side of that shootout in the Ole Miss game last week, LSU. They head to Mizzou this weekend. That's an even bigger number at 64.5. You going over there too?
I am. I was hoping, yesterday morning, Missouri was +6. I was hoping it would drift up towards 7 because I kind of lean Mizzou. Drinkwitz has been good as a home underdog, 6-2 ATS with 5 outright wins, but it came down to 5.5, 5. So I'm going to pass on the side. I sound like a public square with all these overs, but I think it's justified. The over's 5-0 for LSU. They're ranked 4th nationally in total offense, 7th in scoring. Their games have averaged combined scores of 75 points per game. Brady Cook, QB at Mizzou, playing the best football of his life, 74.5 completion percentage, 11 touchdowns without an interception, 3 rushing touchdowns. Wide receiver Luther Burden is playing like a first-team All-American, former 5-star recruit, enjoying a breakout season, 43 catches, 644 yards, and 5 touchdowns. And we know LSU's offense is a juggernaut. Defense, not so much. I'll go over 64.5.
And then the Red River, we've been trying to say that all day. I was going to try to get it out quicker. Red River rivalry this weekend, Texas, Oklahoma. Who do you have on that one?
I'm going to go with Texas minus 6.5. The Longhorns have won all 5 of their games by double-digit margins. They have had 2 non-covers, but they were laying more than 30 points in both of those. They beat OU 49-0 last year. Obviously, that gives OU the revenge angle. But look, Oklahoma is playing well, 5-0 straight up and against the spread, but they let SMU and Cincinnati hang around for 4 quarters for the most part. And I just don't think Brent Venables and company have played much top flight competition, whereas Texas went to Alabama, won by double digits, went to Waco, beat Baylor 38-6, albeit with Baylor's backup QB. But I'm gonna go. I think the Longhorns break open a close game, late 3rd, early 4th, win by 2 touchdowns.
All right, B. Let's move on to the NFL. Is there any betting side that you like in tonight's game that might give anyone a reason to actually want to watch that thing?
Yeah, I'm going to go over 44.5 for Bears Commanders. The over is a perfect 4-0 for the Bears. Combined scores of 59, 51, 44, and 58. Chicago's number 31 out of 32 NFL teams in scoring D. They're giving up 34.3 points per game. Until Justin Fields had the 2 fourth-quarter turnovers, he was having the game of his NFL career. He was 28 of 35 last week, 335 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. And, they had a 31-28 game for 59 combined against Denver last week. Washington's defense has given up 34, 37, and 33 last 3 times out. So this is a low number. I think we get plenty of points. I like how Sam Howell bounced back from that 4 interception performance against Buffalo and threw for 290, 1 touchdown, no picks. Also had 40 rushing yards. Had a good defense at Philly last week. Let's go with the over tonight.
So I know the Dolphins had been treating you pretty well with the way they'd been scoring, kind of came back to earth last week. How are you feeling about them? Is there a side that you like with the Dolphins and their points?
Yeah, I'm going to go their team total over 30.5, which is exactly what the Giants are giving up per game, 30.5 points per game. Miami's offense did kind of have a little comeuppance last week. I split on those teams. I had them in the first half over, which was a winner, but when they failed on that 4th and goal early in the 4th, ended up not getting over the 26.5 as they finished with 20. But there are other games. They scored 36 against the Chargers, 70 against Denver. I think Tua and company will get rolling again offensively against this very weak Giants squad. So team total over 30.5 for Miami.
And then one of the biggest games in NFL this weekend, San Francisco versus Dallas. How are you looking at that one?
Yeah, I love San Fran here. I think I bet them on the look-ahead line last week -3, but I'm okay at -3.5. I mean, if you can buy the half point to 3, great. If not, no problem. I think I would take the Niners -3 or 3.5 at home against anybody in the NFL. The way they're playing right now, they've won all 4 games by at least 7. The other 3 games they won by 23, 18, and 19. They've beaten the Cowboys in the playoffs the last 2 years, 19-12 and 23-17. When the Cowboys went out west 2 weeks ago, they lose by double digits at Arizona. So give me the Niners laying the short number at home.
Brian Edwards helping us make some money. We appreciate you as always, Brian. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, y'all. Y'all have a great weekend.
All right, coming up next, we'll talk to Michael Bruntz to start off hour number 3 on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back.
Tied into the left side for Alabama on 1st and 10 from their own 47. Milroe tucks it. Tucks it, Bruntz, lot of road, 45, 40, foot race, 30, 20, 10, 5, tucks it. Tucks it. 47.
We will be back.
And from their own 47, Milroe. Time.
Partially a class schedule thing to give them some opportunities to be able to, there's different majors and different classes. So we have a lot of guys, like we had guys this morning in accounting and engineering and construction engineering. So part of it's the class schedule. Part of it is because we're a Friday practice team, there's 36 hours between Tuesday's practice and Wednesday. So we can practice hard on Tuesday and then practice hard on Wednesday. We can lift this. So all the guys came in and lifted this morning. So they practiced Tuesday. They meet Tuesday night. They close up kind of what happened on Tuesday. A lot of guys, if they're good players and they're good at the process, they do some film study. They come in Wednesday, they lift. A lot of guys kind of do some stuff extra, but they have a little more time to recover, so we can still work really hard on Wednesday, but they're just kind of not beat up still from Tuesday. So it's a little bit class, a little bit that, and then we come in Thursday morning. So they turn right around after Wednesday night and Thursday morning. We walk through, and then usually we practice on Fridays. This week, obviously, we can't, so we'll play on Friday.
Kicking off our third and final hour here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. That's Avarie Howard. We are on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and now for our third hour on KFOR in Lincoln. I want to tell you real quick about our friends at Dingman's Collision Center. They have been in business in Omaha for over 25 years, and they are 18 years running first place Best of Omaha. 4 great area locations. They can work on all your makes and models from Fords to Teslas, and they've got the latest technology to do so. Family owned and operated, and they're a great part of the community with their Give Back program. Go to dingmans.com for more. We are joined now by our friend Michael Bruntz from Husker 24/7. Bruntz, how are you this morning?
Not bad. How's it going?
Oh, we are doing just terrific, having a good time here on the show. So I asked Avarie this earlier, and I'm curious what yours is. Do you remember what is the most wrong you've ever been on a sports take?
The most wrong I've ever been on a sports take.
Yeah.
Oh man. I don't know. I think there were you know how Denver had that run of just like really, really bad quarterback drafts, like
Brock Osweiler, yeah,
Texas Lynch, and Tebow run of things.
Yeah.
That I felt like one of those would hit, and I think I was kind of vocal about that, and that obviously did not happen at all. I'm trying to think what other ones. I don't know. I don't really go too hard in the paint with stuff, but that would probably be near the top.
You don't have any wild A's takes that you've shot off late at night?
No.
I mean, sell the team's not really a hot take.
Probably go to bed. Yeah, I love the all-in move in 2014 whenever they traded Cespedes and kind of went all in.
Mm-hmm.
I at the time liked that move, and that was not a good move as it turned out. But I don't know. I don't really have a lot of A's takes. I always just accept disappointment, and it just kind of default to anger now. It's kind of where I'm at. It's just angry about things.
As you watched, or maybe you didn't watch, the Twins advance in the playoffs for the first time, your colleague Brian Christopherson's Twins advance since the last time when they beat your A's in 2002. Did that stir any emotions, any feelings?
No, I was happy for BC. It's funny though, if you kind of followed along through the year with his feelings about this Twins team, that had to have been. He was like a self-hating Twins fan this year. Just completely out on him. Was expecting the other shoe to drop at any moment, and it hasn't yet. And I think he's bought into this plucky little group they've got. So, not too bad of memories, but when they were doing the 21 straight losses or whatever it was, it's like, yeah, I know what the last one was. Thank you. It's like when everybody, there's certain people in the media that make sure to remind me that when it comes around the Royals winning the wild card game over the A's, like I remember all these things. Thank you, people. I don't need the reminders. It's already on the calendar of sadness.
I would love to see an actual calendar of sadness, Bruntz. That'd be incredible. Could you?
Well, I'm an A's and a Broncos fan. It's year round. That's all I got.
Yeah. As a Royals fan, those were our glory days.
I was gonna say you're talking to one of your nemesis right now.
Sorry, it was short-lived. Hit the peak, and But as we kind of shift our focus to Illinois this weekend, just from hearing the players speak this week and coordinators and head coach. Kind of what's the feeling that you're getting going into Friday? I know Anna yesterday kind of put it, do you feel like Coach Rhule's putting too many eggs in one basket, saying, you know, everyone will see what kind of team Nebraska is this Friday? Do you feel that way too? Or what are your feelings after hearing everyone speak this week?
Yeah, it adds pressure, right?
Yeah.
And I you know, the way they decided to go about things this week with the Sunday practice and going full pads, you know, I think that was the smart way to do it. I mean, I don't, as much as everybody says, you know, flush it, turn the page, move on. Like you got to kind of sit in it a little bit, right? Like you gotta go out, you gotta correct some mistakes, and I think, you know, that they didn't show up. I mean, you know, as much as, you know, Matt Rhule wanted to parse words and you know, talk about, you know, whether the fire was there and you know, whatever. I mean, the fact of the matter is they were playing head-to-head football, and that was a prime example of what happens where if you don't show up to the fight, you're going to get hit in the face a lot, and that's what happened against Michigan. And you know, I think the way that they kind of approached it early in the week was good. To kind of say, look, this is not us. This is how we're going to do things differently. You know, the players seem to respond to it, and you know, we won't actually know until they get out on the field against Illinois. But you know, from just kind of the 50,000 foot view, yeah, you are going to find out a lot about this team. I mean, are they going to kind of wallow and you know, kind of, you know, not come out again? I mean, they've seen what happens when you don't. And this is an Illinois team, and you don't want to use the winnable game. You don't want to end up on a bulletin board, but this is a game that Nebraska should be able to get. And if you're kind of doing the scorecard at this point in the season and kind of seeing how you can get into the clubhouse with a bowl game, you kind of got to get this one. And, you know, I think they understand that this is a really important game for the direction of their season. And plus, you go to a bye week right after it, you get a chance to reset the deck a little bit. So it is a really important game for them.
I know Nebraska probably isn't on the level of looking at games and saying that should be a win or win a bowl, but because you bring that term into the conversation, do you feel like Nebraska's margin of success this season could be winning the games that on paper should be wins? Because I feel like that's something the past few years, it's, oh, that's a winnable game, or that should be an easy win, and it's not.
But yeah, no, I mean, that's, you know, Illinois has won the last 3 games in this series. I mean, if anything, they should be looking at this game and saying, okay, we've got a down Nebraska team coming into our house on Friday night. I would guess that both teams see this as a winnable game. And to your point and your question, yeah, I mean, that to me is what October and that early November stretch is for Nebraska. Is every one of these games coming up is a coin flip game, and every one of these games is going to be a test of everything that Nebraska for the last 10 years has not done well. You know, can you win the turnover battle? Can you win starting field position? Can you not, you know, have backbreaking mistakes and busts? I mean, it's going to be a test of their ability to play complementary football. And, you know, as much as you kind of look at a matchup and say, okay, this is a game that Nebraska should have a chance in, they've got to go out and do it. And the fact remains that, you know, for the last few years and for a lot of these guys on Nebraska's roster currently, they have not gone out and done it. And that's where the test is how do you, I mean, even just elevate your play to a point where you're, you know, doing the little things that allow you to win these coin flip games that you have to win to you know, go to a 6 and 7 win team versus a 4 and 5 win team.
Bruntz, I'm curious because you said something there that sort of made my ears perk up a little bit. You said elevate their play. Do they need to elevate their play, or do they just need to even out their play? Because it seemed a little bit like Rhule thought, yeah, there's definitely some guys out there that aren't playing up to their potential, but it seems like against the teams like Illinois and a lot of what's left on Nebraska's schedule, if they just evened out their play rather than having all the highs and lows, that would do a lot of the work for them.
Yeah, no, that's true. And yeah, I mean, you don't turn the ball over. You do the little things on special teams and defense, and a lot of these games, you know, over the next month and a half or month or so, you can probably feel pretty good about your chances of winning. I do think, defensively, especially what you saw last week, I mean, that was not the same group that you saw intensity-wise, detail-wise that you saw against Minnesota, or even, the first half against Colorado. And I think that's kind of what I go back to and I say, you got to elevate things a little bit. And, you're facing teams over the next few weeks that, are going to try to really challenge you by running the ball. Illinois is going to try to do that. They've, had mixed results doing that, but it's going to be, that kind of a, long kind of heavyweight fight. And, you have to be able to stand in there and do it. And I think that was the thing that was a little bit disappointing about last week was, that Michigan's a better team. That they're farther along in their process with the head coach where Nebraska is. But it just didn't seem like there was no oomph there. And I think that's where you kind of need to elevate things a little bit more is you bring the intensity a little bit more. And I think that more than anything to me was the surprising thing last week was that it was just a kind of a flat, almost defeated football team. It looked like coming out of the tunnel.
Yeah. Looking at Illinois' defense coming in last in a lot of ranks in the Big Ten, Nebraska, that being one of their strengths, just haven't seen that as much as we have in the first few weeks. Do you see this being a bigger opportunity for Nebraska's defense or more of Nebraska's offense in this matchup? I feel like we've seen the level that Nebraska's defense can get to and needs to return to and maybe excel, but haven't really found the stride of Nebraska's offense. Do you feel like this could be a game where maybe they both find their groove, or which opportunity is greater for Nebraska in this one?
Yeah, it feels like it's an opportunity for the offense. And I always appreciate that they throw that little chart in with the Monday game notes where they have, where a team ranks in the Big Ten and where they rank nationally in a lot of statistical categories. And neither of these teams are particularly high, and especially Illinois. I mean, Illinois has really struggled to stop the run. They've given up a lot of yardage on the ground, and I think that's the challenge for this game is whether or not Nebraska can kind of find its mojo a little bit running the ball. So I think they're going to have to. Are they able to get Heinrich Haarberg going again with the option game? Anthony Grant only had 6 carries last week. Yeah. You got to get him going. What is Josh Fleeks going to do this week? How much can he do? It seems like the type of game where Nebraska should be able to get into an offensive rhythm. They haven't done that consistently this year, but the numbers say that that this should be an opportunity for the offensive line, and they should probably be accepting that challenge. On the flip side, I guess the other thing that is kind of maybe been overlooked is Nebraska's dip in pressure, and they haven't the sack numbers aren't what they were at the start of the season. Illinois does give up a lot of sacks, and that would be on defense where I think Nebraska has a chance to kind of get back to what they were doing earlier in the year. But to me, it feels like a game about Nebraska's offense. If they're able to come out, control tempo, and do things on the ground, I think that'll give Nebraska a really good chance in this one.
We're talking with Michael Bruntz of Husker 24/7. Bruntz, we were talking to some Illinois people kind of throughout the week, and one of them brought up that they really struggled with some of that perimeter run game, some of the kind of choice run game, whether it's an option, whether it's a zone read, whether it's an RPO. On that RPO, we haven't seen a ton of it from Nebraska. We did see a little bit of it at times. I'm specifically thinking of a touchdown pass to Billy Kemp, I think, against Northern Illinois. Do you think that's something Nebraska can or wants to work into the offense a little bit more? Because it does seem like a place where Illinois could be particularly vulnerable.
Yeah, no, I think so. And I think pretty much, anything going to the outside. I mean, I think we've seen at times that Nebraska really does run well on the perimeter. And when Nebraska's made kind of some halftime adjustments and come out with some different looks in the second half, I think that's where they've been able to gash teams, or, whether it's the quarterback breaking big runs or finding a little bit more space on the edges. I mean, I think that's something that Nebraska definitely has to explore in this game. Illinois, for as much as they've struggled statistically on defense, they do have some good guys on that defensive line and then the interior. So, to me, it makes sense to threaten the edges a little bit and see what you can do there, maybe finding a big player too. I mean, as much as I guess I talk about, the rhythm and kind of the body blows and things like that, getting a big player too out of the run game would be huge at this one, because it feels like it's going to be a low scoring game, and a bust here or a big touchdown run, something like that, I think would really go a long way in this one for Nebraska.
To start the week, Coach Rhule said, he needs the players on his team that may be playing on Sundays or just the leaders of this team to really show up. I know that might have been a blanket statement to his entire team, assuming that they're all paying attention. But in this game specifically, now that he's kind of challenged some of his team, which players on this roster do you think maybe took that personally and may be the ones to rise to that occasion this weekend specifically?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I felt like that was more directed at the defense. I think they've got some guys on that side of the ball that they feel like are Sunday type players that, have been playing steady football, but maybe haven't been making the kind of game changing plays that Nebraska needs. I mean, Matt Rhule's been harping for a couple weeks now on the need for turnovers and creating turnovers. And, a guy like Quentin Newsome, to me, that's a guy that you're hoping can finally get one for you, because he's played pretty steady for the most part this season, but you just haven't had those kind of back-breaking plays made by Nebraska's defense much this year. And, I mean, you factor in that, Deshaun Singleton, who was such a tone setter for this defense, is going to be out. Luke Reimer is going to be out too. So, you're looking at your Isaac Giffords, your Javin Ranks, your Quentin Newsome's to step up and make a few plays, because you don't have those kind of tone-setting guys in there for you, and you're going to need you're going to have to win the turnover battle, and it's just such a big deal when you're playing on the road and you get one or two of those. And Illinois has shown this season, Altmaier in particular, that he's more than willing to give up a turnover or two. So Nebraska's going to have to be ready to take advantage of that.
Bruntz, one guy that you didn't mention and that have seen out of action for the last couple games, who does seem to have made some of those plays when he was in, was Cam Lenhart. How much of an impact do you think his apparent return this week will be for Nebraska?
Yeah, no, I mean, with the sack thing, Nebraska has not been bringing 5 and 6 guys in pressure as much as they were at the start of the season. Matt Rhule said he wants his guys up front to win one-on-one battles, and I feel like you kind of go down the list of defensive ends and guys that would fit that bill, and then Cam Lenhart was winning a lot of one-on-one battles against Minnesota and Colorado, and I think getting him back is important. They've had a few guys that have won those. Jabari Butler had one or two, couldn't finish off the sack against Michigan. Princewell, I think, did too. But, if you just need a guy to put his hand in the dirt and go get the quarterback, the guys on the roster, you feel pretty good about Cam Lenhart. So maybe that gives you a little bit more juice in there. They've moved Princewell from defensive end to jack, so he's going to be playing a little bit differently. There's not a huge difference in responsibility between the defensive end and the jack, but maybe you can utilize him a little bit differently to create pressure. But they're going to need guys to win one-on-ones up front. And, Cam Lenhart right now is probably as good as Nebraska has going right now.
Bruntz, I'm curious about that move with Princewell from kind of end to that jack spot. Do you think that's kind of just to give him a little bit more space to use what they've called kind of freaky athleticism and not be kind of in the mud so much in the trenches, or what do you think that move? Why do you think they made that move?
Well, part of it's because they're moving Bayer to the inside linebacker spot in place of Reimer.
Sure.
There's a little bit of the downhill there, but yeah, I mean, I think where he is right now, I think they list him at 240. I don't know that that's necessarily what he is. He looks a bit slighter than that to me. But yeah, I mean, I think you got to find ways to take advantage of that. And, I think in small bursts, he's been pretty good. But when you have the playmakers and you got guys that you feel like are game changers, you got to put them in the spot to do well. And, for Princewell, it really isn't that big of a move. I know he was working at that spot quite a bit in the spring, so it's not completely new to him. So I wouldn't expect too many, growing pains or things like that on Friday. But yeah, I mean, I think it's an opportunity to kind of feature a guy that's one of your better pass rushers. And, I think, when you talk about kind of looking into the future of guys on that defense they're really good about, I don't know that there's anybody that's probably higher on the list right now than Linhart in Princeton.
Bruntz, before we get you out of here, a couple just sort of random questions here about, guys that are available or position changes. We didn't necessarily expect a ton from Josh Fleeks, and then he gets one carry and obviously takes that to the house against Michigan, although against backups, but did save Nebraska from the shutout there. A guy that it sounded like we expect to see this week is Jaden Doss, who hadn't been playing for other reasons. Obviously, he had the injury. Do you have any idea what to expect from him, even in terms of like snaps played, much less production, or I guess how big of a deal is it that he's returning?
Well, I mean, it's, a lot of conversation about getting the freshman wideouts on the field. And at the, fall camp, start of the season, we were hearing a lot of good things about Jaden Doss. Like, he was probably the most ready of those wide receivers. I think he would have probably already, played quite a bit had he been healthy, but he broke his arm. So, I always kind of err on the side of caution a little bit whenever a guy's coming back from an injury, especially a younger guy. I mean, maybe you get him in there for a few snaps. I'm not expecting, 25 snaps or anything like that, but he's definitely in the mix, which I think is a good thing, and it's coming at a good time. I mean, with the bye week, you can get him a little experience, get him up to speed a little bit more during the week off. But I think they're probably at the point now where you're starting to feel a little bit more comfortable with the idea of Jalen Lloyd being in there, with Jaden Doss being in there. I know Malachi Coleman was coming out of concussion protocol, so some mix of those guys. But I know that they really like what Jaden Doss is going to be long. Like I said, I mean, I think they were pretty disappointed with the injury he had, because it kind of came around the same time that Xavier Betts left, and you're kind of trying to figure out how this looks. But getting him back is really important, because I think long term he's going to be a really nice player for Nebraska.
That's Michael Bruntz from Husker 24/7. Bruntz, have a safe trip up there, and there's if you need some food spots, let me know. I've got the inside track on some Champaign-Urbana spots, so let me know.
Okay, we're driving through northern Missouri to get there. So if you got anything in like Chillicothe, let me know.
That's more of an Avery Howard question. We'll if she comes up with anything, we'll send you a message. Bruntz, we appreciate it.
Thanks.
That's Michael Bruntz, Husker 24/7, joining us on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline. Warhorse Sportsbook is the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. Go in person, plenty of kiosks, plenty of tellers, or you can get the Warhorse Casino app. Download it, build your bets, and then go scan the QR code at the casino and place your wager there. Warhorse Sportsbook, no bets, no glory. Coming up next, we've got Barrett Sallee from CBS Sports to talk about the SEC on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. 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 We will be back.
Tied into the left side for Alabama on 1st and 10 from their own 47. Milroe tucks it, runs. A lot of room. 45, 40, foot race, 30, 20, 10, 5. Touchdown, Alabama. Jalen Milroe, 53 yards, and the Crimson Tide gets on the board first.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. That's Avarie Howard. We are joined now on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline by Barrett Sallee of CBS Sports, covers college football. Barrett, how are you this morning?
I'm great. How are you?
We are doing terrific. We appreciate you joining us here to talk a little SEC football. I guess right off the top here, some interesting matchups this week. Georgia, Kentucky is the one that jumps out to me. Obviously, both teams 5-0. There's a little bit of a perception that maybe Georgia has taken a step back this year. Do you think Kentucky has a real shot here to kind of put itself on the map with an upset win over Georgia?
Yeah, it does. I wrote this after the Auburn-Georgia game from down at Jordan-Hare Stadium that Brock Bowers is the MVP that Georgia hasn't needed the last couple of years. You know, they had 5-star after 5-star and everything was hunky-dory and there were no imperfections. This year is completely different. I think the biggest one is that Georgia's defensive front, its front seven, which was the best in football, perhaps the best in college football history the last couple of seasons, is awful. statistically right now. I mean, flat out awful statistically right now. So I think for Kentucky, you look at what Ray Davis did last weekend. I think he's still running against Florida. That's a problem. And then you also look at it from last weekend's perspective. Auburn's offensive line is crap, and they reset the line of scrimmage on Georgia pretty consistently throughout that game. So, yeah, Kentucky's got a chance, but I think in terms of what Georgia's planning on doing is they still are going to try to run the rock. They're still going to try to, keep this relatively simple. They've done it all season. They don't care about flash. They don't care about style points. They don't care about keeping it sexy. They just want to win games, and they can win them ugly. So I think Kentucky's got a shot because it'll be a 4-quarter game, but I think that will be only because of the score. And if Kentucky catches a break in the fourth quarter, then, yeah, things could get interesting.
We're laughing because we're up here in Big Ten West country, and off air we were like, wow, it's interesting to say that the number one team in the country has gone a little bit backwards, yet they're still 5-0. Like, wonder what that's like. But just through the few first weeks of play and conference play now, has anything really surprised you or stood out more than you expected before the season started?
Yeah, LSU struggles because I thought that the defense would be better, the secondary would be better, the transfer portal additions would pay dividends, but it just hasn't happened. And I think as a result, you get these track meets that they've been in pretty much every single week. That's disappointing because I thought that would be a hallmark of what that team is. DBU would be back, and kind of on the flip side, I thought the Bobby Petrino Jimbo Fisher marriage would end tragically. I mean, and quickly, and it hasn't happened. I mean, it looks like a happy marriage at this point. And now they're going into the Bama game with some momentum. So those two things I think stand out probably more than anything else. Maybe South Carolina, I thought they'd be a little more consistent, but I'd say LSU and Texas A&M.
One team I thought you might throw in the mix there was Missouri. What have your thoughts been on what you've seen from a 5-0 Mizzou team and just what they've brought to the SEC so far in this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think the win over Kansas State obviously put them on the map. I'm not necessarily saying I don't believe in Missouri. I do. I think Brady Cook the last 3 weeks has been awesome. Set the SEC record for consecutive completions without interception last week against Vanderbilt. And I think we talked to Eli Drinkwitz on our Sirius XM show after the Kansas State game, and he himself was surprised at how dynamic Brady Cook has been in the Kansas State game. It's only gotten better. Yeah. So to me, I think with Missouri, I'm a believer to a point. Yeah. But I do want to see what happens if they get into a track meet with LSU, which I think is probably going to happen. It's going to hang because LSU's got weapons and they're fully comfortable with being in point-a-minute shootouts. They can't stop anybody, but they certainly are comfortable offensively.
We're talking with Barrett Sallee of CBS Sports. Barrett, you mentioned Texas A&M and kind of what everyone viewed that awkward marriage between Jimbo Fisher and Bobby Petrino there, but it almost seems like they've flown under the radar a little bit at 4-1. That one loss to Miami right now doesn't look bad at all. Have you been a little surprised at all? I mean, you said you were surprised at how well it's worked, but are you surprised at all that maybe people aren't paying more attention considering how much hype Texas A&M had gotten in previous years?
Yeah, because they're always the off-season darling, right?
Right. Yeah.
And now they're actually pretty good, and no one pays attention. I think probably because Texas might have sucked the air out of that a little bit. You know, people in the Lone Star State kind of just are distracted by Texas, which I get it. But I think with Texas A&M, it's weird because you've had all these storylines with Connor Wegman getting hurt and Max Johnson coming in and playing really, really well, and then the defense being a massive problem against Miami, and then suddenly the last 2 weeks they have 7 sacks and 15 tackles in each game. So it's like, okay, what are you? Like I can't figure, and I don't know if there's an answer right now because suddenly defense is a strength, and suddenly their backup quarterback's better than a really good starting quarterback. I mean, it's interesting because I just the narrative and the identity hasn't been defined yet. So I'm a little surprised people haven't been paying attention yet because they are the off-season darlings. But I think maybe there are a couple things sort of sort of superseding that in terms of the national perspective. But that will change this weekend if they beat Alabama.
I got a question for you about additions to the SEC next season. But before we get that, I actually have some transfer questions about additions to the SEC. Were there any transfers that had come in the offseason that were high on your radar, you were looking forward to watching and have performed at that level? Or have there been some that have transferred in that haven't really met your expectations yet?
Yeah, the one that hasn't is Peyton Thorne for Auburn. He threw for 6,000 yards in the Big Ten for a reason, right? Like he might not be a superstar, but he should be effective. And I mean, in big games against Texas A&M and to a lesser extent Cal, but that was on the West Coast. I mean, it's not that just he was been bad; he's been awful, like flat out awful. I mean, I thought the floor for Peyton Thorne would still be pretty high. And it's not, and the floor is really, really low. So that is one. And then Vanderbilt, like Ray Davis, I don't think anybody watched him at Vanderbilt because it's Vanderbilt.
Because nobody watches Vanderbilt.
This guy can play. I did not think that he would break out in the way he has. And, part of that is because I didn't expect Kentucky's offensive line to suddenly figure out what it is again, because it was awful last year, and now it's one of the best in the country. So I think both of those two things, that kind of contributes to Ray Davis' success. But, he's got to test this weekend. I mean, look, Georgia isn't what it is from a front seven perspective, but Ray's got to set the tone from a rush perspective to give Devin Leary a shot.
Yeah, now getting to the Texas-Oklahoma edition, I feel like we hear about it up here a lot just because, Nebraska used to be in the Big 12, and then how it was spoken about when they departed. But what are the actual feelings from SEC fans, people in the South, other teams truly about the edition outside of it being the business decision that it is?
Honestly, nobody cares. And I'm not even joking about that. It's just like there are two teams coming in.
Yeah.
And I know Texas thinks of itself as God's gift to college football, and Oklahoma thinks of itself as like an offensive juggernaut. And it's like, okay, y'all coming in, cool. And when it happens next year, okay, maybe that changes, but I doubt it. I think it'll change if and when they either get signature wins or fail mightily. But until one of those two things happen, honestly, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Barrett, I got to ask before we let you go there. I thought I heard some little dogs barking in the background there. What kind of puppies are we working with?
Sorry about her.
No, you're okay. What is she?
She's a 9-week-old, so she's still.
What kind?
Yappy.
What kind of dog?
A golden retriever. We have a 9-week-old golden retriever, and a 9-year-old golden retriever.
Oh, there you go. You got both ends of the spectrum there. Well, I'm a big dog guy, so never apologize for the dogs barking in the background. I've been on your end of it more than once, so I appreciate the puppy training you got going on over there. Good luck with all of that.
It's not going well. I can tell you, it's not going well right now with football season for me and my wife doing like 7 different things at the same time. It's not well, but there's a goal in mind.
It's going.
Not reaching it yet. we know it's there somewhere.
Well, good luck and Godspeed with the puppy training, and hopefully that you don't get too many of those little demon teeth bites before the teeth fall out with those puppy teeth.
I've already gotten plenty. My heels are all jacked up right now.
Barrett, we appreciate your time. Thanks, man.
Thanks, all.
That's Barrett Sallee of CBS Sports. We'll never complain about hearing puppies on the radio.
No.
We'll wrap up the show next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back.
Watch out for the big
tight end that's in the game, 6'7", Benjamin Bramer. He's in the slot, rolling right back to throw on 3rd and 9. Lee Bowman, pick 6! Crimson Curtain! It strikes early on a Saturday night! Watch out.
We will be back. We will be back.
Watch out for the big tight end that's in the game, 6'7", Benjamin Bramer. He's in the slot, rolling right back to throw on 3rd and 9, still looking. Now he tosses deep downfield. Intercepted! Billy Bowman picked it off. He's on the run, far side to the 30. He's got a convoy to the 20, to the 10. Pick 6! Billy Bowman, pick 6! The Crimson Curtain! It strikes early on a Saturday night!
As we wrap up the show here on a Thursday, I want to tell you about our friends at Pratt Dental. Pratt Dental, located in North Platte, Nebraska. They are known for their BioClear method and modern smile design, which can correct many aesthetic dilemmas in a permanent and less invasive manner than traditional treatments such as crowns. Dr. Pratt is the only certified dentist in Nebraska with the BioClear method. Multiple restorations can be done in the same day. Less time, less waiting, less invasive, and fewer appointments. Pratt Dental can be reached at 308-221-2800. Joining us now to talk about the biggest game of the weekend in college football is Berry Tramel. He comes to us from Sellout Crowd. Berry, how are you this morning?
Well, I'm doing great, guys. How's things in Nebraska?
You know, we can't complain too much. We could use a few more wins around here like you've got down there in Oklahoma this year, but we're working on it. We're getting there, Berry.
Well, Matt Rhule, he had that rough year in year one at Baylor.
Mm-hmm.
And by year three, they were just a bunch of rattlesnakes. So So hope springs eternal.
Well, Barry, I'm glad you brought that up. It kind of was lost on me for a second that you probably have some pretty decent familiarity with Matt Rhule down there with all the coverage you've done to Oklahoma. And in his third year, you guys played a couple really close games, one in the regular season, one in the Big 12 championship against Matt Rhule's Baylor teams. I guess are there any words of encouragement you'd like to give Nebraska fans as we kind of wade through year one here, which has tended to be challenging under Matt Rhule regimes?
All I can tell you is this: when Lincoln Riley left for Southern Cal, and OU was in the market for a football coach, I made a list of my five favorite candidates. I had Shane Beamer, number 3. He had left a year earlier to become the head coach at South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
I had Brent Venables, number 2.
Okay.
I had Matt Rhule, number 1.
Okay, well, that makes me feel
Matt Rhule.
That makes me feel dramatically better. I know there's no love lost between Oklahoma and Texas in the Red River rivalry, and Texas kind of sucking a lot of the air out of the room with their start this year, getting a lot of the attention. But Oklahoma off to a 5-0 start as well. What has been the biggest change from year one with Brent Venables that was a little bit of a struggle to now where they've gotten off to a very good start?
Well, let's just be honest. There's two differences.
Okay.
One is they weren't bad last year. They were 6-7, and they played 5 close games, and they lost them all.
Mm-hmm.
So, Texas Tech, for example, went 3-0 in overtime last year, finished 8-5. Everybody got excited. They really weren't an 8-5 team. It was the reverse of Oklahoma. The Sooners were really about an 8-5 team last year, not 6-7. So they weren't as bad as maybe people thought. Now this year, we have no idea if they're any good. They played an incredibly weak schedule. Cincinnati's the best team they played. Cincinnati's beaten Pitt and lost to Miami, Ohio. They're just, a really mediocre team. So we don't know about Oklahoma, but they aren't beating themselves yet. They're not committing turnovers. They're not busting on in the secondary. They're making tackles. So they look better, but they're not tested until Saturday. That's when we're going to start finding out what kind of team they've really got this year.
Yeah, on Texas's side, they do have a schedule that's tested them. They have some obviously big wins. Alabama's the talking point there, but 2 strong offenses coming into this game. When you look at this game on the field, where are some weaknesses maybe on Texas' side that Oklahoma can take advantage of?
Well, I think they got to pressure Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers has played 5 quarters against Alabama, has been fantastic.
Right.
Against everybody else, he's just been okay. I saw him live in Stillwater last year. Heck, I saw him live in Dallas. Texas won 49-0, but Ewers wasn't great that day. Floated a lot of balls. The Sooners were in such a mess it didn't really matter. But in Stillwater, he threw 3 picks, did not look good, got rattled. Oklahoma State beat Texas. So maybe he's improved. Maybe that Quinn Ewers is gone. But the Sooners need to try to find out, see if they can make him make mistakes and start throwing the ball to the wrong color. He's done it in the past. Can he do it? Can he do it Saturday?
Barry, you mentioned that game last year, the 49-0 win of Texas over Oklahoma. Do you think that plays into it for Oklahoma at all? I mean, how close is that to the back of their minds when they're heading into the rivalry this week?
Well, yes. Clearly, I think Oklahoma Texas is a game where the past matters more than most because it's a neutral site. Think of rivalry games, whether it's Michigan, Ohio State, whether it's Alabama, Auburn. Home team always plays better. You can go back to the great Big Red battles between the Sooners and Huskers. It always mattered if you got to play at home. And, you wanted to win. You felt terrible if you lost. But if you lost in Lincoln, if the Sooners lost in Lincoln or the Huskers lost in Norman, it's a little bit of a hedge in that, it wasn't our year to win it. And in the Cotton Bowl, there's no excuses. It's 50-50. Nobody has an advantage. Nobody's sleeping in their own bed. Nobody has their own locker room. So it's a no excuses game. And this has been a series of wild streaks. One program gets on a roll and wins 5 in a row, or 6 of 7, or goes 8-2 in a decade. And I think that's because I think the psychological advantage is with the team that won the year before. So Texas ended, I don't know if they ended, but Texas had been dominated going into last season. Longhorns win big. That's got to create doubt in the Sooners' mind, even though they played without the quarterback. Dylan Gabriel didn't play last year. OU ran a wildcat good chunk of that game. But I do think the psychological edge rests with Texas because of what they did last year.
For those of us who haven't experienced this game in that location, what is that atmosphere like to experience, maybe as a fan or not a fan of one or the other, but just as a college football fan in general?
Well, it's one of maybe the most unique settings. Not only is it a neutral site game, a 50-50 split in the crowd, split at the 50-yard line, but it's halfway almost to the mile between the two campuses.
Right.
It's actually a little closer to Norman than Austin from the Cotton Bowl, 5 or 6 miles closer. But even more than that, the thing that really sets it apart is it's at the middle of the Texas State Fair. State Fair, Texas, like most things in Texas, it's bigger than anything else. I mean, it's a massive fairground, this wild revelry, and then all of a sudden you introduce about 200,000 football fans. 96,000 of them have a ticket. The rest of them just come to carry on.
Yeah.
So, it's just a wild scene. Everybody wearing red, or burnt orange, and just milling about, the livestock and the midway and the car show and, every place you see burnt orange and crimson. So, leading up to the game, the last 20 years, it's sort of become a tradition. They start at 11 a.m. So the pregame revelry is not as much of a build-up. Then after the game, the loser goes home as quick as it can, and the winner roams the fair and enjoys the festivity. So it's unique, not just because of the stadium or the neutral site, but because of the fair. There's really nothing like it anywhere that I know of.
Berry, as we wrap up with you here, this is kind of an especially unique situation for the Red River rivalry. Dang it, I was so close. The Red River rivalry, because it's the last edition before both of these teams move on from the Big 12. I guess, how much does that factor into it? And as you look down the barrel of heading into the SEC, how do you feel overall about Oklahoma and the position they're in to be successful jumping conferences?
Well, two things. One is I feel better than I did coming into this season.
Sure.
Because the SEC looks down.
Yeah.
When you talk about the monumentalness of the SEC is overrated, except for two entities, Alabama and Georgia.
Sure.
People say, oh, you're going to go to Ole Miss and play. You're going to go to Tennessee and play. I mean, Tennessee has nothing on TCU. Ole Miss has nothing on Kansas State, both as venues and as teams. The SEC prowess mostly lies in Alabama and Georgia and what they've been able to do. And I know LSU can be a monster. I'm not discounting the Tigers. But when you say, are you SEC ready, what you really mean is, can you stand up to Alabama and Georgia? And the truth is, the SEC as a whole, and Alabama in particular, looks down this year. So it's a nice time to maybe be going into the SEC. And then if the Sooners are getting back to where they were before Brent Venables' first year, well, then that's great timing. Texas has gotten there. Texas is legit. They went to Tuscaloosa and won. Perfect timing for the Longhorns to enter the SEC. We'll see if it's perfect timing for the Sooners.
Berry Tramel of Sellout Crowd. You can find him at berrytramel.com. Berry, we definitely appreciate your time and all your insight. Hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Good luck to the Huskers tomorrow night.
Thank you, sir. You too. That's Berry Tramel.
I would have loved to hear our last two guests have a conversation.
Oh, I know. Let's get Barrett and Berry in the same room, see what we can do there. Maybe do a little group chat sometime. Shane, I don't know what the technology looks like on that side. But Avery, appreciate you joining me again today. Tomorrow I'll be here with Mike Sauter, and you'll be off to Champaign, Illinois.
Sure
hopefully to get some fat sandwich.
I'll report back or maybe not. We'll see.
This is Hurrdat Sports Radio. We'll talk to you tomorrow.